Commissioner Newman approved, Commissioner Clapper second. Motion passed with 4 yea votes with Commissioner Clapper not present.
It's Richards. Thank you.
So that's that one. And the other one was, I think that same date, it was the annual review approval to Nakawaka special review. You had the motion passed 4 yea with Commissioner Richards not present, and I believe Commissioner Owsley voted nay. That's what I caught.
You want to move the minutes on it as amended?
Make a motion to move the minutes as amended.
Second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes as amended. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, then to the next item, resolution appointing hearing officers and a list of arbitrators.
I make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion? I would have a question. Are these the same? I think it's the same people we had last year. And Jeanette, do you recall?
It is.
It's all the same we had on the list last year. Okay, that's what I was thinking.
One new arbitrator, which is Betsy Chris Manich. She agreed to be on the list this year, and that's good. We need some more people that are interested in being arbitrators.
Okay.
That's a new addition.
Okay, we'll vote on this. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Moving on.
Did we make a motion for that?
I moved it.
Yeah, it was moved and
Okay.
seconded.
I
Yeah.
seconded.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah. And Zach, are we on? Okay. Our meeting is underway right now. This is the Board of County Commissioners meeting for a regular meeting on Wednesday, June 10th. And we're just starting our individual consideration items now. Patty, would you want to make your...
I can do it now.
Why don't you do it right now?
I just want to make more of a public safety announcement. The rivers are extremely high. The rivers are actually raging. We've had some issues with some trees down in the Slaughterhouse Bridge area. Please, if you're rafting either commercially or privately or kayaking, please do so with great care, with great safety precautions. If you are just attempting to get close to the river, don't. The banks may be falling in. The river is really raging, and we don't know how long. It may come down a little bit with this cooler weather, but it's going to pop back up there. So we really, really advise people to proceed with caution anywhere on, near, or around the rivers. And I just wanted to move that forward. And the public safety, our Public Works Department, in case we do have exceedingly high rivers, has sandbags available. Do you know their number right off? And so you can always call Public Works. It's on our website. And actually, I have it right here. And they have sandbags ready to go, and they have ability to make sandbags very quickly. So if you have the need, you can always call our Public Works Department. Can't get it. So thank you very much.
Also along that line, Patty, there's a report on the North Star Preserve. A paddleboarder went around the very first corner, and the water was moving very fast, and the bridge, there was only about this much clearance underneath the bridge, and they had to lie down on their paddleboard and just barely made it underneath the bridge. So just be forewarned if you're putting in at Wildwood School and going down through the North Star Preserve, you might hit the bridge there, or be prepared to get out and portage around. But
you got your pulse glove.
Yeah. And I do have the Public Works number is, Public Works direct number is 920-5390. That's 920-5390 for anybody who has questions about river flow or sandbagging issues.
okay. Were there any other commissioner comments while we're moved back?
No.
Okay, moving on to individual consideration items with one reading. This is a public hearing for a special event liquor permit application submitted by the Buddy Program. Patty can sit down there.
Okay. Come up here, please.
Hey, Jeanette Jones, Deputy County Clerk. And I have with me today Chelsea and Megan from the Buddy Program. And this is an application for a special event liquor permit for their annual event on July 9th at the Merry-Go-Round Ranch.
Which is Boogie's. Back to Boogie's.
Place. And I'll let them maybe give you a little bit of information or answer any questions you might have on the event.
Sure. Yep. Hi, I'm Megan. I'm the development manager with the Buddy Program. So just to reiterate, we have our 16th annual Bash for the Buddies, we call it, returning to Boogie's Ranch, the Merry-Go Ranch on McLean Flats. It is Thursday, July 9th. We have a capacity of 500 people. We're hoping, and it's looking likely that we will reach it. The evening begins at 6 o'clock. There will be a silent auction and cocktail hour, followed by a buffet dinner, followed by a kind of a program and a live auction, followed by dancing. So with live music. So that's kind of the overview of the evening. Do you have any? Yes.
Patty?
Yeah, this is a great opportunity for you guys to really get this out to the public, where they can, how much the tickets are, where they can purchase
Sure.
them, how they can get a hold of you.
Yes.
Jeanette?
And I'm sorry, Mike Kramer's also here if you have any questions on the special permit, the community development issues.
Sure, thank you. So you can, tickets are for sale and available online. You can go to buddyprogram.org to purchase tickets online. You're also welcome to call our office to learn more about the event. It's, our number is 920-2130.
It's a great event, it's a great organization.
Thank you. And
Rachel?
So the bartenders you'll be having are tips trained,
yes,
okay?
Yes.
And do you have provisions for, making sure folks are safe getting back on the road?
yes.
We also have Jay's valet that will be doing valet and notifying us if anyone shouldn't be getting in their personal vehicle, and we will be calling cabs.
Thank you very much.
Is this, how many years have you done this fundraiser there at the Merry-Go,
Ranch?
what is the Merry-Go Ranch?
Yeah,
And is this your main fundraiser
Yeah.
for the whole year for the
Thank-
Buddy Program?
it is. So thanks for bringing that up. It's the Buddy Program, just in case anyone's not familiar, serves over 1,000 youth through our 5 youth mentoring programs, and that's from Aspen to Carbondale. So we have a really impactful and important mission and serve this community, we believe, in a really wonderful way. The Bash for the Buddy raises a large portion of our annual operating support for our programs throughout the year. It's I should say that all of our programs are offered at for all of our participants at no cost. So we depend on the Bash for the Buddies and other fundraising efforts to help us raise this fund so that we can serve our community in such a way.
I would move to approve the special event liquor permit application submitted by the Buddy Program.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the application. Is there any further discussion or questions?
It's a
All in
Public
favor?
hearing?
This is a public hearing. Does anyone in the public wish to make any comments about this? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank
Thank
you
you.
and have a
Thank you so much.
wonderful event.
Thank you.
Hope it's highly
Chelsea,
successful
I'll
for you.
email Chelsea their license.
Great, and I'll get you the check. I'm sorry, I got it, but I'll just drop it up here.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Next item is for individual consideration, resolution authorizing supplemental appropriation for carryover projects.
Is John coming down?
No, I don't think he is. I'm Susan Atwood, and this carryover projects are projects that were approved in 2014 or prior years and haven't been finished yet. So do you have any questions?
Move to approve?
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve. Any further discussion? I was just, in my mind, I was trying to picture, so these are projects that we approved during 2014, or perhaps even 2013, that were not
Right.
done. They were carried forward. The money was appropriated but not spent.
Correct.
So now
But-
at this point, the projects are being done and the money is being spent. And that's why we're doing this approval right now. Is it good?
This is budgetary approval. You've approved the projects, and to get them into the 2015 budget, you need to do the budget resolution.
Okay. So the project might not actually be done this year. It could be carried forward again. Is that
Yes,
correct?
yes.
Okay. But this just, if the department is able to do the project this year, then they have our approval too.
A lot of projects, like the airport projects, the runways, they're multi-year projects, or the underpass at the ABC, so you need to keep moving the budget.
Okay. Let's see, did we have a motion? We
Yes.
did have a motion. It's been, call the question, all in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And
Can I
then-
just stay here?
Yes, stay there, please, Susan. The next item is basically the same thing, but it's for items from January through May of 2015, is that correct?
Correct. The projects were approved in the supplemental budgets, but in order to legalize the budget, you need to do the resolution.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the supplemental budget. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. The third item for, let's see, this, just to clarify, these are first readings. Public hearing will actually be held on June 24th for those two items, and then this one right now. This is a resolution approving the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment Consumer Protection Contract Amendment Number 3. Kurt.
Kurt Dahl, Picken County Environmental Health Manager, and I'm here with CJ Oliver, and I think Rachel Burmeister is in the back with the City of Aspen Environmental Health and Sustainability Departments. We're here, this is the first reading for the annual renewal of our consumer protection contract. We've had a consumer protection contract with state health departments since the late 60s. The consumer protection contract is an agreement that we will do the restaurant inspections, school inspections, and child care inspections, and take complaint and investigate complaints for hotels, campgrounds, mobile home parks, and swimming pools. There are no changes to the language of the contract, with one exception. This year, we have a joint contract with the city. The state came to us last year when we initially started talking with them about we were going to join our boards of health. They asked that if we were interested in joining our consumer protection contracts. We previously had combined consumer protection contracts until the department split in the late 90s, and at that point we ended up with both each individual contracts. The contracts for both our departments are identical. We almost literally have the same number of inspections, a few different facilities, but they're in essence identical. There's the same amount of money. So we were agreeable to it, and when we signed the IGA with the city earlier this year, forming the single board of health, there's language in that IGA that discusses the administration of a single contract for consumer protection for both the city and the county. In essence, the county will receive the funding, and then the money that has been set aside for the city will go ahead and send that to them. Other than that, we have an agreement with the state health department to operate basically as as separate entities, so there will be separate reporting still. This really helps the state in terms of administering contracts because they have a number of contracts with different jurisdictions. In a lot of cases, they have a single contract for all the public health services. But in our county, until this year, there were 3 separate ones, one with community health for their public health services, and then my department, and then the City of Aspen's department. The fee for the that we will receive is $20,000. That's $10,000 for the city and $10,000 for the county. That fee has not changed. It's been the same for several years. That fee covers, in our case, about 10% of the cost of the department. We also then collect fees for restaurant licenses. Both this fee from the state and the restaurant license fee cover about 40% of our program. So 60% of the program is subsidized by the county. And I know CJ.
And our numbers are almost identical to that. We essentially have one FTE devoted to the consumer protection program, and the $10,000 covers roughly 12% of that salary. The license fees cover about another 29%, which gets us to 41% covered here, and the other 60 or so percent by the general fund.
Rachel?
I'm naturally going to support this and appreciate your great work, keeping us safe, keeping the food products safe within our community. And this also inspects the schools and daycare centers as well, so it's a very important aspect. For the public to understand, we do subsidize the rest of this program because the state doesn't. And that you either have the opportunity to have the state do inspections or you do your own inspections. And when the state, because they're so underfunded, does them, they are often every 2 to 3 years. And given the turnover in restaurant employees and the need for constant training, we look at this as a training opportunity far more than a punitive or punishment opportunity. To be able to make sure that a workforce that changes frequently is really up to standards for our guests and for our community. We did try to work through CCI this time to increase the fees that the restaurants would pay for their inspections, but the restaurant industry lobby is quite strong, and there was some attempt to move it out of statute. It seems quite odd to have a fee in statute, which then requires the entire state legislature to decide when and when not to adjust for inflation. So we'll probably try it again. It certainly is the same percentage for us as for larger counties, but some of those larger counties are subsidizing $400,000 a year to make their programs work and keep their public safe. So appreciate all your hard work of you and your staffs. And I would move to approve on first reading the Consumer Protection Program State Grant Contract Renewal.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded to approve. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you, gentlemen.
And the
Thank
public
you.
hearing
Thank you.
on this will be
On June 24th, public hearing.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, moving on to the second reading items, and these are all public hearing items. First one is the ordinance authorizing acquisition of the Carricart property. And we have Matt Adeletti from our open space and Dale Wilk from our open space department are both here.
I'm Matt Adeletti with Picken County Open Space and Trails. This is the second reading for the acquisition of the 1 acre property owned by Michael and Natalie Carricart. I'm going to bring up a map here real quick.
You want to just slide over right to it? I can slide.
This property is located adjacent to Hooks Lane and Hooks Spur Road, and it is a vacant parcel of land, and the purchase price that we are under contract for is $75,000 for it. The reason behind this purchase is to contemplate a parking area that would house approximately 30 vehicles, and this would be to access about a mile up Hooks Spur Road, and I could bring up another map that kind of shows where it goes up in a second here. That's about a half mile away to the new glacier trail that we've just opened up. And so let me bring up that other map that is kind of a little more zoomed out. That's maybe a little too far. Let me get one that's a little closer in. And as you can see on the right, bottom right corner is the 1 acre parcel, and on the top left corner is the trail alignment in yellow, and you can see in the green is the Glacier open space property that was purchased about a year and a half ago. And so the county asked that the commissioners approve this acquisition for the potential of creating this property into a parking lot.
Yeah, I know that some members of the board went on a tour. I was unable to, but I did come in when I was coming down Valley the other day, up Valley, drive through there. I'm familiar with the parcel, so I'm comfortable. Forget again though, what's the half mile, quarter mile from the parking to the property trailhead?
I believe it's about a half mile.
About a half mile, okay. Just want to make sure we're,
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Could you go back to the first, the closer up view?
Certainly.
George and I went on the site visit. None of the other board were there. And I wanted to point out something and then ask what the proposal from the staff is on how to deal with the problem. To me, it's like an engineering problem that could end in a disaster. There's an irrigation ditch that comes in right here, and then it bends and goes down here. And it's on high ground with sloping off on either side of it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also water that cuts off there that I presume to go over to Amy French's property there.
Mm-hmm.
Put a parking lot on top of where there's an irrigation ditch, which is the only way to irrigate all the land down that side of the road. Somehow you have to get the water through there, and I want to know how you're proposing to do that, because it is
Sure.
the high point, and I don't think we want to fill the whole thing in to move the ditch over somewhere else on the property, but what do you propose?
We spoke with Michael Carricart, and Gary Tenenbaum, our Assistant Executive Director, is going to be, well, he can speak more about the actual phase of that type of construction management, but we talked to the Carricarts about this, and one of the conditions was that we do not impact the flow of water in any way for either pieces of property. That ditch remains as it is, and we can't impact that. But as for the actual design and that kind of thing, Gary may be able to speak about that more, but that is something that we haven't really even looked at yet, because we still are in the acquisition phase and we haven't come across that yet. But that is a very, it's a concern that is going to be a priority that is not impacted.
And, we have Schmoozer Gordmeyer and DHM that are going to be part of the design of this parking area. And that's one of the constraints on the design, is how do we deal with this ditch? And Michael Carricart has been open to piping this ditch. And, but as Matt said, we are going to maintain his water right through there. And, also he is allowing us to use some of that water to initiate landscaping in that area. So that's all going to be figured out, and SGM is working with DHM on the proposal, the concept that we talked about at our site visit, and that will be taken into account to make sure that that's not going to be impacted.
Okay, so the ditch would remain where it is, perhaps piped. The parking would be designed and constructed around it, around the ditch somehow, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, and I couldn't remember, you don't happen to have that tentative drawing of a possible parking pattern? Do you have that on the PowerPoint?
I do not. I don't have that. I just have the some of these aerial photos.
And right now the whole thing with that is we're updating that to really take all the comments from the site visit and try to come up with a design that works for as many horse trailers as we can, separated, and showing how we would drive through, and how also, that conceptual design really didn't even look at any conditions on the property, where this next design, which should be done in the next week or two, and we'll set a public process to go look at that. So we'll look at that as soon as that's done.
Okay. George?
For me, that site visit was really informative. And it really clarified in my mind that there should be plenty of opportunity to utilize this parking, not only for vehicles, but also for horse trailers in those vehicles. And so at that meeting, I'd asked for a schematic, similar to the schematic that they did for the Glacier home site, that showed separation from the horses and pedestrians, as well as circulation. And so for me, I think this is going to be a very strong, viable option, and really, again, clarify in my mind that I think at least initially we should utilize this parking. I think it showed that the Glacier home site had some issues, as well as the parcel C. So I would support this parcel for the purchase.
A motion?
It's a public.
This is a public hearing, and this will be, I'll open the public hearing now, and anyone who wishes to speak on it may. And so if you could stand up or even come forward closer. There's a little microphone for the grassroots TV that just records your voice a little better. Hold this.
Okay, here.
And then state your name for the record, please.
Thank you. Should I hold this? Can I put this here? Okay. My name's Laura Smith. I'm a neighbor near the Glacier Open Space. And I'll just be brief. I just want to thank you guys for taking the time to do a site visit and spend time on this and show up and look at the land. Because it's a really beautiful, really special area, and this lot at the end of the road is such a creative solution, and I just wanted to praise the open space staff and board who spent a lot of time on this, trying to find that really difficult balance between recreation and those other pillars of open space, the scenic beauty and the wildlife and the sense of refuge and quiet, which is sort of increasingly hard to find everywhere, Mid-Valley included. So I just wanted to encourage you to continue to work with this, with the ditches and what have you. It's already kind of a heavily used area. It's about 60,000 people who use that trail already, and by RACTA's count. And I know that will increase, but if we can work on the balance and keep the cars off the road and keep things at the end of the lot where parking is already and traffic is already, I just wanted to speak in support of that and kind of praise that solution.
Thank you. It's nice to hear those positive comments.
Yeah, it's been a long process, and a lot of people have done a lot of work.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. I'm going to leave the public hearing open until we're done with all our public hearing items.
Move to approve.
I haven't made a motion yet, but, you made a motion.
He's moving to.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve. Is there any further discussion? And I have a couple of things I want to talk about that we learned on our site visit, actually, just for the benefit of the rest of the board. One thing I asked about on the site visit was about the funding of it, because I thought it was odd that Pickens County was buying it and Eagle County wasn't participating in the purchase. And the land is in Eagle County. And Dale, you explained to me that Eagle County Board of Commissioners approved the purchase of this. And in lieu of putting money into purchasing this, they put a lot more money into purchasing land in Tom Waldeck's, and I can't think of the name of it.
Emma Farms.
Emma Farms. Dale, could you address that a little?
Sure. Essentially, they're splitting this purchase with us, but in order to streamline their administrative process, they've elected to actually make the cash contribution at our Emma Farms deal, which is set to close here July 10th. So they're putting an extra $40,000 into the Emma Farms purchase, which is a little bit more than 50% of this, but that's where that extra 40 came from in that other transaction. It's intended to be their contribution to this, and the reasons they wanted to do it that way are their reasons, and it's nothing we requested, but it works nonetheless, so.
And another observation I had, we looked at, on the site visit, we looked at the two different options down on the Glacier property, one around the house and then one on the parcel C across the road, which were the two potential parking places there. And then we came and looked at the Carrot Garden property. So we saw all the three different options. And my gut feeling right then was to not decide anything on the other two things on the Glacier property right now, but to go ahead and develop this, put the parking in, and then see how it works. And give it a year or two before we even have to really decide anything about any further parking down on the Glacier property. And that to me seemed the prudent way to proceed. And would you think that would be kind of a wise thing? Because we wouldn't have to reopen the management plan and make changes in that, which would be
There's a motion.
big process. This, yeah, I know there's a motion.
Steve, I appreciate your discussion comments, but I would like to have a much wider discussion before we give direction to stop work here or do more work there. I think that that's kind of separate from the acquisition. I mean, I appreciate your observations, and I, as people know, have been traveling with NACO and then also was ill with bronchitis, so I didn't make the site visit, but I will do that and we'll talk about other options further.
Well, I would just, because three of you weren't on the site visit, and that was what my takeaway from the site visit was.
Okay.
We purchased this and then do this project before doing any of the other stuff.
Okay.
So,
Again, I just think that's a larger discussion to have.
yeah,
Set it
for
up
sure.
for that.
Yeah, appreciate that, Rachel. Okay, any further discussion? It's been moved and seconded to approve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is ordinance authorizing acquisition of the Deer Creek Ranch property.
Thank you, Steve, and I'll just lead off on this one. We're well staffed here with myself and Gary and Matt. This Deer Creek property was unknown to us until this winter. Was brought to our attention by the listing broker, and it has amazing qualities for the open space program. Among those are access to the Roaring Fork River, access on and off the Rio Grande Trail, contiguity all the way from BLM lands on Williams Hill over here to National Forest lands up Albany Gulch here, and we'll come back to the Albany Gulch in a minute. The property also has some water rights that we're evaluating. Apparently has 50% of the flow of Deer Creek, that is the actual creek that comes down Albany Gulch. And we think that it really fires on all four cylinders for open space, which is scenery, habitat, agriculture, and recreation. So we've been through first reading on that, and now we're posed for second reading. Now, one interesting feature, and really kind of the dominant element to this purchase, is this canyon that comes into the Snowmass Canyon from the east, and that canyon has been named Albany Gulch, but hardly anyone has ever been up there. So we've put together a slideshow, which, if it's okay, I'd like to just get that going so that people can see what it looks like up there, because it reminds me a little bit of the story of Glen Canyon Dam, that the place no one knew. Albany Canyon is like that, although fortunately it's not threatened with being flooded or anything like that, but it's a beautiful place that no one knows. So Phyllis, for me to get my computer on here, this is the main part. Okay.
multiple one that has the little.
Okay. Well, all right, here we go. Let's see what's going to happen here. Known for this protected areas that you happen to know, is there like that F1? If this doesn't work, we'll retrench, but we got it, so thank you. Everyone can see what's on my private drive, that's fun.
You want to hear that music?
Wait, no, not that one. So I'm gonna just get this thing going, and what this is it's contributions from two different photographers as to what's up Albany Canyon, and one of the photographers was me. That's Howie, our chairman of our open space board, and there's Matt showing people around. We also had John Stenchvold contribute some photos, which are in here as well. That canyon, it just blew my mind. That is national park quality up there. This is down on the river. This is Chuck's old barbecue. But anyways, the national forest in that canyon has been inaccessible to the public except from up above, which you can get in and out of there from up above, but having the opportunity to manage some public access from down below, where we are standing right here, is only about 200 yards up the canyon from the edge of the property that we're acquiring. So this purchase really is an opportunity to take a priceless piece of public land and manage access in and out of it. I would commend it to anyone that has a chance, once we've figured out how and when access is appropriate, to enjoy that place. So, of course, with open space purchases, after the closing, we undertake a management planning process. We were just in the previous item looking at one of the follow-up steps from a management plan that involved decisions about where the public would park and how that would be managed. What would go on here is something similar, where after the closing and before we invite the public onto this property, we'll undertake the kind of review that we do, where we look at the environmental issues and consult with neighbors and with sister agencies, in this case the National Forest as well as the Parks and Wildlife, to determine what's appropriate, and we won't get the public going up there until we know those things and we have a plan that can adequately protect the natural resources while allowing the public to access what's already their property. So anyway, unless my colleagues here have more to add, my thought would be to just leave this going and can continue.
So Dale, these photographs are not actually of the property we're acquiring?
Correct. These photographs are all taken on National Forest land that becomes accessible as a result of the purchase of this property.
This one here and
Well,
this one here are on the property. There's a couple that.
That's an exception, right?
But
This
that's
is
on the river, but.
This is on the
Underside.
property.
I'm going, wow, there's a lot of water up there.
No, and then the barbecue, the old barbecue.
The
thing,
barbecue is on
down,
the
it's also down by the river.
That's on the property.
Yeah.
We got George already thinking about what he can cook down there, but. So, anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that this side canyon is virtually unknown to all but a very few and is simply extraordinary. It's just extraordinary.
The pictures that Jan had were from the top, so that'll be something for people.
Those are not coming
Yeah,
through.
if
I
they
thought they
come
were in
through-
this folder.
Yeah, but they were from the top of the canyon, looking at the panoramic view plane.
See
and-
if
yeah.
if for some reason they're not firing here. And while I'm doing that, go ahead, Dave.
George, you went on the walk up there. What was your perception?
I'll wait and give my comments after
Okay.
staff and public comments.
There.
There they are. See if we can get these to go.
So these are Jan's pictures?
Correct. And Jan has opined that you can get up and out of that canyon at the top end. And there has been some discussion about whether that's feasible, but here he is up there, and he did this on a horse. So I'm assuming it's one of those things where what one person might want to do isn't the same as another, but at least Jan can get out of there. They're so
Well, you gotta have a good telephoto.
yeah.
He's got one of, was it a grouse that he saw?
I think it was a turkey.
Was it a turkey? It's beautiful.
It was a grouse.
Was it a grouse?
Unless it's a different picture than I saw.
I think it was the same one.
Yeah. There it is.
Grouse?
Grouse.
Okay, there we go.
And Howie. A grouse and Howie.
Yeah. There's Snowmass Canyon down at the middle of that last shot. So the Open Space Board has unanimously recommended this purchase. One nuance that John Ely and I were just discussing is that in 2006, the county's open space charter was amended to allow the county to reserve flexibility on disposition of assets if it's marked at the beginning in the ordinance. And we have done that here to set the stage for the kind of thing that Steve was talking about, where on the back end of this purchase, if it's determined that the continued public ownership of those residences and some of that surrounding irrigated land may not be warranted, the county would have the opportunity to either transfer those two houses to its housing program or transfer that entire upper piece to a private owner subject to rights of the public to access up into this canyon.
That just tells me there's a lot of creativity that remains besides the very specific management plan. A lot of these things will be worked out after, if we purchase this property. And there was the other issue that the opportunity for a public-private partnership in funding this. That's something else we could pursue as we move along, or how, that's a new one for me.
Well, some of the public that are here may have some information that I don't know about, but at least on that point at the first reading, I exchanged business cards with the attorney that was here and invited him to contact me about that. And I haven't been contacted. However, I did note to him that the public-private partnership doesn't necessarily have to happen prior to the purchase. It can happen on the backside of the purchase if we elect to resell some features of this property that aren't essential for the open space program.
Just to keep that door open if it's a possibility, because that was a new and interesting possibility. Thank you.
George?
I got a couple of questions. So we talked mainly today about the canyon and the access up into the Arby Gulch Canyon. But can you talk a little bit about the other side of the road, the river property, and what that would provide in terms of river access and fishing access?
Sure. I think we have that on a map that,
Yeah, let's switch.
if you want to unplug my computer and shut down the slides and get back to the map. Essentially, what we get in that regard, the property is got about 500 feet of the Roaring Fork River traversing it, so the banks on both sides are on that 500 feet. You can see it here, but we probably have a map that's zoomed in a bit. And so there's direct access on this property to the river, and that spot where Graham was standing in that slide is surprisingly mellow, considering you're kind of down in there just above the Toothache Rapid. But I was surprised. There was a place where somebody's launched some boats. Somebody's driven in and out of there before. It'd be easy to launch a kayak down in there. But in addition, as you can see here, the purple on this map that are upstream and downstream, these are all fishing easements that the county already owns. So both upstream and downstream, there's fishing available that has been awfully hard to get to except by boat. So this purchase would open up those possibilities as well. I guess then finally, this piece up here, George was asking whether CDOT might have acquired this during the condemnation for the 4-lane, but so far it's showing up as owned by this owner in our title search. So I doubt much of anything's going to happen up there. It's very steep and makes a nice thing for open space to just have it to eliminate any potential of any kind of nuisance proposal for that side. This middle piece between the Rio Grande Trail and the Highway 82, beautiful little oak grove and spruces down in there with pretty mellow in and out of the river right there. And then, of course, the last piece we were talking about, which is Albany Canyon up this way with Chuck Cherrick apparently had a lot of heavy equipment, and he's got an awfully nice parking area for trailers and everything else ready to go right there. And then the small irrigated pastures and a couple of residences on the property.
So, can I just follow up? So Dale was right. I did question actually these lower two parcels, because what I had heard was when CDOT went through to 4-lane the canyon, that they actually had condemned some of that land and had paid characters for that. So they didn't purchase the entire parcel, they just paid for a portion of through that condemnation.
That's correct.
And so we're not double paying them on this, are we?
No, the title to the property that is the site, so to speak, of Highway 82 has already passed to the state of Colorado. So it is essentially the right-of-way that is seen, plus additional margin on either side of that is already now owned by the state of Colorado.
I think you can see a parcel line right here.
Is it owned as an easement or owned as a piece of
fee? And so the balance of the property, with the exception of the Highway 82 corridor, as well as the Rio Grande corridor and the County Road corridor, is what is being offered for sale and for the board's consideration now.
And then that middle parcel, just on the south side of the Lower River Road, that is subdividable just because of the break in the road, but so it didn't have to go through subdivision process. It automatically subdivided, and someone could, if they were to purchase this property, could apply for a building permit on that parcel as well?
Theoretically. There might be additional code implications that would have to be considered, but the division of the property being complete by the Rio Grande right-of-way was essentially done prior to the adoption of Pickens County Land Use Code. So the property was fractured considerably long time ago.
Okay, thanks.
Michael?
So Dale, if we were to purchase this property going ahead, the Open Space and Trails would do a management plan on this property?
Yes, Open Space and Trails would do a management plan. Now, interestingly, the ordinance that we've drafted also reserves the ability of the county commissioners to contemplate a resale of features of the property. And whether that would happen before or after a management plan is adopted would ultimately be your decision, I would think.
The only thing I would add to that is to follow up on Dale's earlier comment that there was mention, it didn't really be it wasn't incorporated within the first reading of the ordinance specifically, but there was mentioned last board meeting, the first reading of this ordinance, the potential for conveying off a majority of the property that is to potentially be acquired uphill, if you will, leading into Albany Gulch from the county road. If that were the case and the board wanted to go in that direction, I would recommend a couple of changes to the offered ordinance in paragraph 3. But other than that, if the board simply wants to consider the potential of preserving the opportunity to convey off the improved portion of the property for housing, for example, then the ordinance is fine as offered.
So, but let me get back to the management plan. That was really my question. What's the process of a management?
Well, that's a pretty hardy process, and really Gary is the person that created that process, so if it's okay, I'd like to hand this off.
Sure. And so, in this instance, we're recommending that the property be closed upon purchase, so a management plan can be created, and to discuss what you guys would like to see with the houses and potential cut, if we're going to cut anything out of that property. But then we go through a management plan process that will incorporate the public. And so, in this case, it would probably be a management plan like we did the Rio Grande Trail management plan pretty recently with, a lot of opportunity for public comment, a lot of open house opportunities for people to come and talk about what they would like to see with the property and get all the user groups in and see what they would like. We would obviously take recommendations from the National Forest and from Colorado Parks and Wildlife. So, it's a long process. Once purchased, we would really, after we figure out what you want to do with the houses and stuff like that, we would sit down and put a process out for the public to see, be very open with it all, and, set a timetable to make that management plan happen.
And the Glacier management plan took how long?
The Glacier management plan took, before it was adopted, it took about almost 14 months.
14 months. And so when interest groups come to you, do they always get what they want?
No.
So how do you arrive at that compromise?
Well, basically, it's what you just said, it's a compromise. So, we try to fulfill our mission, the open space mission, which is recreation, scenery, wildlife, and agriculture. And so on this piece, we would look at all the considerations that we have out here, look at the constraints, and work with the public on the constraints, and work with user groups, and come up with a compromise, and put it in a management plan. And then the Open Space Board would review it and make the recommendation to approve it if, we come up with that compromise.
So Dale went over some of the assets of the property, not on the property, but so you try to maintain those assets, the wildlife, open space, agriculture. So you don't try to compromise those aspects. You try to preserve those aspects.
Correct. We try to preserve it, but the compromise is, the parking lot. When is it going to be? Like, where, if you do a parking lot, where is it? How does it get screened? How much parking we're going to put on it? Seasonal closures. We look at the wildlife and when is the most important times for wildlife on that property, and really, working with the National Forest and Colorado Parks and Wildlife, who, are the experts in this, and if we need to, we will hire our own consultants to look at this too. And then, you make the compromises, figuring out a way to allow all of these things to exist and not, basically degrade any of those qualities.
So if an interest group, say that represented rafters came and said, well, we'd like a concrete ramp leading into the river that's 16 feet wide and 30 feet long, they might have to compromise on that.
Yep.
And if I could just jump in on that, the staff make our best recommendation. And then there's 2 layers of sort of political reevaluation that happen with the Open Space Board, and then ultimately the authority to do all this comes from you guys. So we make our best recommendation, and if we happen to miss something, then there's 2 safety nets there.
So the Open Space and Trails Board reviews the management plan and approves it?
Under the county's current code, that authority was delegated to the Open Space Board. I think it ultimately resides with you.
And then they pass that recommendation on to the commissioners. So at the end of 14 months, we got the recommendation from Open Space and Trails for the Glacier property.
Right, although I want to be clear that the way the code is currently written, the Open Space Board has the final authority to adopt these plans unless they are also creating some sort of rule that's enforceable through our rangers, like we did on Smuggler Mountain and a few places where the plans were actually adopted by the county commissioners. On the other hand, plans like Sky Mountain Park were adopted by the Open Space Board after consultation with the county commissioners. But however you prefer it to happen is how you can make it happen. It's just under the current code, the Open Space Board does have that final authority, although they like to be mindful of your views on things when they exercise that.
Well, then we also, in all of our planning efforts on Glacier and even Sky Mountain Park and all of these, we do a check-in with the BOCC as the management plan is moving forward. So you all are brought in to where the decision process is going, and we take your feedback and put it in the plan.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to tie in, I'm not a hunter, but I've heard from hunters who have, that's a great hunting area, either onto the federal lands. I know we have somebody here from the Parks and Wildlife, but, and we have an issue with no firearms on county open space. So that's a question for me, is if there is hunting access, I'm not sure, through that canyon up into the federal lands, how do we get them if they want to park on the glacier and carry their weapons, their rifles, up into that? I know we had that issue, I think, with Woody, Aston Valley Ranch and getting up into Dry Woody.
Yeah.
So I just want to throw that out there because I did talk to somebody who has hunted that in the past and was concerned about that opportunity.
Well, as you might recall, we just retooled the
thing, yeah.
the Title 12, and it allows people
Okay.
to
So I wanna
carry
make sure
Title 12 is governance of the,
counting the open space and trails.
Part of the county
And-
code.
Right, and it's in the county code, and it was, in the last
You
few
just
months,
did it.
it's been overhauled, and it allows hunters to carry.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that we were going to apply that. Well, that'll be discussed in the management plan, but that was brought to my attention, so I wanted to move that forward.
And we have hunting on Sky Mountain Park in
That's
a
right, with
limited
permit.
basis, so.
Yeah, I remember that discussion as I was leaving.
And I would presume that on this property, there would be no hunting allowed on this property because adjoining houses is within a quarter mile of the road and different, different aspects that would prevent, just against law. I don't know if it's a quarter mile or is it an eighth of a mile, what's the rule, Carrie, on distance from a road to hunt?
Actually 30 feet from the center line. But however, I would agree with you, this isn't a parcel that hunting should be done on.
And hunting's not allowed on open space.
Yeah, the hunting would be up in the
There'd
federal
be
land.
access to,
Yeah, that parcel itself does not lend itself to hunting.
right.
Okay, this is a public hearing, and I'm sure there will be quite a few people wishing to speak on this. So, if you wish to speak, if you could come up to the table just for, so you're close to the microphone, so Grassroots TV is recording it, and just state your name for the record. And we want to limit our comments to, not too lengthy, several minutes per person.
Hi, my name's Daniel Richard Soderberg. I own 2569 Lower River Road. I am in between that purple V down at the bottom right there. Yes, sir. So it affects my property, it affects my children. We have an ethics on Lower River Road very similar to Woods Road. If anybody here knows Woods Road, you know, the neighbors had a little battle once years ago, but most everybody has a way of trying to drive your road. And nobody that I know of at the bridge on Jirbaz Road knows any of that. You know, we got just today coming here, it's a lot of traffic. They expect all accidents to increase by 3 times. Car accidents, bike accidents, it's dangerous. And it's our neighborhood. And I'm sitting here today asking you, my sister-in-law, ex-sister-in-law was Temple Glacier. I know you guys. Been a part of my family all my life. And I sit here in the middle, to my right, and I ask you folks, please, not in our neighborhood. It's a beautiful neighborhood. And it's dangerous, let alone the wildlife. I'll leave it with that. I hit wildlife. Wildlife jumps out all over the place. Why would you want to hurt animals? Why would you want to bring in more traffic on an old hay road? Yeah, we tolerated an interstate. That was a nightmare. We did our job in our neighborhood for the community. We helped the canyon on Highway 82. We didn't fight that one because we knew we needed to help the community. This is our home. I've lived in that neighborhood since 1980 at the Wildbach, which is now the River's Bend. And I speak from my heart. I'm not ready to cry here. My wife said to me the other day when I talked, I sound like I'm ready to cry. I'm not ready to cry. This is my home. This is my neighborhood. And it is very dangerous. And I'm asking everybody to take that into consideration. Might be a great deal, but you're coming into our neighborhood. And it's going to hurt every one of us. And it's going to be very dangerous. And I drive that road. I actually slow down, pull over, let people pass. Nobody's going to have a clue with trailers, things coming through. Please, not our neighborhood. I beg of you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Marty, we'll get you next.
Hi, I'm Deb. This is my neighborhood too.
What's your last name, Deb?
Bamesburger. I've lived in the canyon for 15 years. These are my neighbors. We have a ton of wildlife in our neighborhood. There's elk migration going through there. There's a rare black cougar back there. There are mountain lions, foxes, bears. I can't see more traffic on that road either. It's already, the people who don't live on that road drive 50. It's 30 miles an hour. They don't care. They don't care if they run over our dogs, our kids. We don't want more traffic. There are plenty of other river accesses. We don't have to have another one. The parking lot's going to get full up there. There's going to be all these strangers in our backyards that really don't care about our property. All they want to do is get up there. I, for one, am against this purchase. I'm a Pitkin County landowner. I'm a taxpayer, and I don't want our tax money paying for this property. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Deb. Marty?
Marty Schlumberger. resident of Lower River Road. I own 2 pieces of property adjacent to the proposed purchase, and I have some comments to make to the board. There are a number of potential downsides to the county buying this property. The benefits of the purchase have been oversimplified, exaggerated, in reality, do not outweigh the negatives. The county should, thus at a minimum, delay the purchase while it conducts a responsible evaluation of costs and benefits to the citizens. There's 3 things that jumped out at me today. The property that we're speaking about is encumbered by easements, which significantly reduce the effective usable acres. These easements includes large overhead transmission line easements. Source Gas has 2 major gas lines supplying Snowmass and Aspen. Multiple irrigation ditch easements. Lower River Road is an easement. Roaring Fork Trail and bike path easement. Plus, and this is very important, numerous river and stream corridor and wetlands subject to minimum county setbacks. 2, this property is directly within Albany Gulch debris flow corridor. This is a recognized alluvial fan hazard that will require significant geological mitigation before any development of any activity envelopes can occur. Purchasing this property, number 3, would remove it from the tax rolls, depriving the schools, road and bridge, and municipalities of significant income. Leaving the property in private ownership would lessen the already strained, burdened budgets of these communities. The upside of this purchase are exaggerated and, I have to say again, overstated. For example, the idea that the property creates a bridge between public lands on either side of the valley only looks appealing on the map. In reality, there's no way to cross Highway 82 or access from Highway 82 the south side of the property. The slopes above the highway are too steep to permit any access for recreation or any other purpose, as noted on the map. The value of having river access from this property is also overstated. There is nothing exceptional about the fishing in this location. Anglers have better opportunities in both up and downstream locations under current control by open space and trails. Finally, establishing and maintaining a trail into the Deer Creek Valley would destroy its greatest value. With the trail system already in place around the canyon's rim and through the adjacent drainages, Albany Gulch provides a unique, and I emphasize a unique, refuge and haven for wildlife. Opening it up to easy access for all would eliminate the refuge, destroy everything that makes it unique and valuable. In summary, the downside of this purchase have not been investigated with appropriate diligence. A number of the benefits look appealing at first, but the true realities of this fragile terrain and surrounding environment need to be evaluated and studied prior to this purchase. The county should at minimum take steps back, investigate further before charging ahead what could be an irresponsible investment. I'd like to commend Open Space and Trails that they took wonderful pictures of the National Forest I think they ran out of film before they had a chance to take pictures of what you're going to purchase. I think it's a blatant misrepresentation that they didn't take a picture of any of the Cherry property but 10 feet of the river. Keep that in mind.
Thanks, Marty.
Anyone else from the public wishing to speak?
Hello, my name is Donna Gardner, and I live at 1350 Lower River Road. There's probably not much that I could include regarding statistics and all of the, pertinent information that Marty supplied, except that I'm a little shocked because we own 14 acres on the upper side, and for years I've been trying to put in just an outdoor arena for my horse. And I was told by Pitkin County that that's a critical elk and migration path up through that upper part, and that it would affect the migration of the deer and the elk. And, I just have horses up there. A lot of neighbors are not allowed to have dogs. So it seems very hypocritical, quite frankly, that you're talking about putting in parking lots with perhaps thousands of people coming through. I can understand you're wanting to access Albany Gulch. It is beautiful. I mean, it is beautiful. It'd be wonderful if you could come up with some other way, but you are right into the middle of a residential area. And we have all been so controlled by the county on allowing even a barn or a loafing shed or just anything that would affect the deer and the elk migration. I'm not allowed to take out the shrubs. There's all this, native shrubs that are up on that upper side. I've been told I'm not allowed to take out any of that, or it's huge fines. We have all these ditches that run through that feed all of the, it's clean, nice clean water that feed. We've got llamas in the area. We've got beautiful exotic cattle that are up on that upper side. We all have horses. I think there could also be a liability to us just by strangers coming into the area that may want to come up and get on our property and pet the llamas or pet the horses, and something could happen with them. It's a tight area. This is a very tight area. I think Marty's absolutely correct when he says you really should walk this before you even consider it. You should walk this property and see what you would be limited with. And a lot of that river is private as far as fishing. So are we going to have strangers that are going to be able to access all of our homes that are sitting along there? I just see a lot of personal liability also that would concern me. So thank you for your time. Thank you for allowing us to say what we have to say.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Don. Linda?
Hi. I'm Linda Wog. My voice isn't so good today, so bear with me. Dear Commissioners, today I speak to urge you to delay your decision as to whether Open Space and Trails has your permission to purchase the Deer Creek property on Lower River Road. The reasons are several. One, many of the neighboring homeowners are not able to be here today to voice their opposition to the purchase, but they'll be here in a few weeks' time. Two, this is a very sensitive ranching subdivision neighborhood that requires a lot of careful thought. The process should not be let's buy it now and decide later what we can do with the property. That would be really unfair to the adjacent landowners and neighbors who are really worried about what could become of their neighborhood. It would be a careless business plan as well. Albany Gulch is Albany Gulch is a very special place that also deserves time and precious thought before one carelessly allows public access, commercialization, and development into this sanctuary that heretofore has had little instance of human footprint due to the limited access and protection it has thrived by. The neighbors have been extremely respectful of this very special place and have agreed to limit access to very few. That is why the canyon is teeming with the wildlife it is. One year I saw 6 bears on one gambled hillside, all eating the acorns together quietly. I was the only one in the canyon. Nobody else was there. 4, there is public access a short distance up and down Lower River Road to both the river and the wilderness. It is redundant to add more access in the very midst of our ranching subdivision between 2 private ranches. 5, allowing the river portion of the property to be developed for public use and commercialization will hugely impact the adjacent property owners, and that is really needless and thoughtless, as there are many areas up and down the river, for instance, the Darts property just down the river, and soon there will be a lot of river frontage available at the property on North River Road. 6, Lower River Road will be greatly impacted by the extra traffic that this purchase will create. Already it is a dangerous road during the summer, and the homeowners have a difficult time turning out on the road with trailers and horses and hay due to all the bicycles that are funneled onto the road. 7, the canyon is a box canyon. It goes nowhere. So exactly who are you serving in making this purchase? Dale Will mentioned that the canyon connects to the deep wilderness, but it doesn't. You'll be harming our neighborhood, ruining the canyon, causing the roads to be even more congested, put undue pressure on the fish, impact the privacy of the adjacent homeowners who have lived here exactly for the privacy that is now being seriously threatened. 8, the land on either side of the river and highway cannot be used, that upper portion on the left, at all, as it is impossible to access, much less climb, as it's a sheer cliff that falls right into the highway. So it is a unique piece of wasted land. 9, the bike trail does not access the upper property, which is the access point to Albany Gulch, so horse riders cannot use that as access, as some have mistakenly surmised. 10, the property has 2 houses on it that open space and trails cannot use, so if they sell off that piece, that too will be developed. More development. This entire open space and trails purchase is development, all in capital letters. Do not fool yourselves into thinking that this is a sterilization and preservation of a special canyon where wildlife is abundant and wildflowers grow. It is development, pure and simple. By active allowing public access and commercialization in areas that were once protected. It's development. Please leave it alone. I realize that you are faced with the difficult task of making many difficult decisions all day, every day, but this one should be easy. When faced with the choice of preservation versus development, choose preservation. By leaving this parcel in the hands of a private individual rather than making it public domain. Please, at the very least, take more time to consider this purchase. I beg of you.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you.
Okay, does anyone else from the public wish to comment?
Paul Theophanis, 2489 Lower River Road. Thanks for giving us a chance to talk today. Didn't get much notice other than a couple weeks ago, but I know that's kind of the way things work out sometimes. I've been overseas, so I haven't been able to get back here to prepare, but at least I can tell you my feelings. So I don't really know much about what the intention is for the project that's in front of you all today, but at least I can give you my own observations. So I'm at the property which is right there. It's the old Wilson property, where it's up there. I can.
Up here?
Yeah, it's a little further down. That's where that's Marty's right. Yeah, right in there. Okay. So that's, unless I'm mistaken, that's the house that's been there since 1893. It was homesteaded, and I haven't touched the property. It remains the same the way it is, and I kind of liked it for what it brought me, which is a lot of peace and quiet and tranquility. And I can tell you the same thing, because I walked that. I don't ride any bicycles or mechanical devices up there. I've walked that quite a bit. It is a box canyon. And all you'll probably do if folks want to go in there and visit, which everybody wants to go and visit beautiful places around Pickton County, so I understand that. But I think it's the light traffic there that allows all the animals to come down. So I'd purchased the property in July 1st of 1998, before the highway was put in. And I can tell you from personal observations that I've kept logs every year, the elk migration was probably over north of 200 every year. More bears, bobcats, and mountain lions, and everything probably everybody wants. Probably the same thing that Open Trails wants to see, so I get that. But what I noticed is that from the trailer park, which is a little bit further up valley, you can walk across there. You know, I'm kind of not the type that wants to get on an ATV and ride around, so I enjoy walking. But anybody who wants access to that can walk across. There's a trail that runs from Upper Valley, and I've seen the people that walk it.
Along the forest fence line there, is that what you're talking about?
Well, you know, as Marty was talking about all the easements where those, you know, the power lines are. So yeah, if you come up from maybe,
You want to point?
appreciate it, just press the red button.
It's kind of inconsistent, but.
I'm not going to hit anybody eyeballs.
No, we'll move out of your way.
I got to hold that. Okay. So as you're coming up over here, so the trailer park's down in here, right? So as you start moving over here, you can walk that across. Now I know it takes a little, and to get right to where, right? So that's the gulch, starting right up in there. I don't know if folks have walked it. I assume they did, but you can get there because I've seen the trails walking across there. Now, granted, it takes a little bit of effort, but we all don't mind walking a little bit. I guess if you're telling me you wanted access for disabled people, which I know quite a bit from the military, they would love to get back there and see things like I get to see. That I kind of understand, but I really don't understand why people just can't just follow the same trail, because I believe, you know, your responsibility is to make sure if you got concentration of energy and effort and foot traffic and development, that you want it where it's already exists. You don't want to add further. And I think if you allow those folks and those trails, again, because you've got the ditch, you've got the power lines, and there's two of those easements for the power lines, by the way, because I know they came on the property, didn't even tell anybody that they were coming, and chopped a bunch of my trees down, but that's okay. That they can walk that already, so they have access to that, in my humble opinion. I do know that after the highway was put in, the elk population cut in half, and I'm quite certain if you start putting more foot traffic back in there, it's going to disappear and go somewhere else, which I guess that's what they'll do. I don't know if they're going to have less of a chance for survival or not, but I would assume they do, because I can recall, as I think Mr. Soderberg had mentioned, folks kind of get all involved in some disputes periodically on what to do with the properties. But over the last 20 years, every time we've spoken, either one neighbor or another neighbor or other folks that maybe aren't here present today, that every time somebody tried to develop something, it always got shot down because of either the land and the refuge, that it was somewhat protected and nobody wanted to develop it anymore. Now, I don't know what you all are trying to do, what type of development is, but I know things, sometimes intentions are well meant in the beginning and they kind of spiral and get a little bit more. But I would suspect, even at the lowest impact, the lowest signature, all those animals are just going to peel out and go somewhere else, if they have somewhere else to go, and I'm sure they do, obviously. But I suspect it's not going to be as beneficial to them, because they all come down there for a reason. So I guess we'd kind of lose that. That would be a negative thing. I'd like to see that further looked at, maybe in a little more in depth, because I don't know how much has already been looked at in that regard. And there's obviously some emotion here on folks, and me too. But I get it, because I like being here and I like seeing things. So why can't everybody else see things? I understand that, but that's my point. If they want to walk, they can walk across. I see their soda cans and their wrappers, and I pick them up and throw them away. But if we take just a little bit more time, maybe to review that and see what it's going to do to the wildlife and the water, because I've got the creek comes right onto the property, and I have superior rights for that water. I would like that sort of looked into a little bit more to see how that's all going to be affected. And considering I believe that's our number one concern. I mean, I know it's getting people services and taxes paid and all that, but I think that would be, that needs to have some more study done. And a good example of that, I would say, is just driving up here yesterday on 82 from Glenwood. I was reminded of some of the concerns folks had in the same neighborhood not too long ago, where commercial grow operation was going to come into play. I'm glad it did or didn't. It didn't, but I don't know if it still will or not. But and I drove past that operation on 82, and I thought I ran over a skunk, but obviously it was all the marijuana that just. And again, I begrudge nobody for partaking. It just, I think it was one of the things that folks maybe hadn't thought through as much on respecting other people's rights to do things, and then how it would affect the rest of the folks who would be affected by that. So that was sort of one example on how maybe if we do a little further study on that.
Okay. Well, thank you for your comments.
I just have one last thing. So part of those developments, disputes that have gone over the last years, every one has involved that debris field. And presently, there's a giant berm that's on there that was put up by the previous owner of the property, and it directs the debris field right at all my property, which has somehow made it since 1893. And we've had debris and we've had stuff come down, and I've been flooded. We've had twice now major floods coming over from that. So I don't, all that stuff has to be discussed on how you're going to end up, developing that before you go ahead and go through the purchase. I think there's a lot of costs and studies that are going to be done, because I'm going to ask for it, because I'm still in a negative impact zone because of what was done prior and still hasn't been corrected to date. So again, I would ask you to do a little more study. I appreciate the county and all the commissioners wanting to listen to folks who want to see what we see, and folks get to see from driving down the road. The traffic that's on there, I kind of don't get it myself. I enjoyed riding on the pea gravel on the path before it got blacktopped. Everyone was told we're blacktopping so we can get the road bikers off the road onto the bike path. Of course, they never ride the bike path, and all I get is F-bombs and, nice little hand signals as we drive by. But I suspect that'll pick up and get maybe more impactful and maybe more negative if this comes through. But I think, again, that is one of the points where I think you need to do a little more study before we all jump in and approve something. So again, I appreciate folks wanting to see it. They can walk across like they already have the right to do. There are multiple easements that already have footpaths for them to walk right there. And so I don't want to belabor that point, but that's
All right,
all.
thank you for your input.
I'll be brief, won't be able to cover
By the way,
much.
I don't see any property, I'm sorry, I don't
Okay.
see any photos of all of our properties and how it's going to be impacted. I haven't seen that yet, so hopefully I can see. Thank you.
I'm Donna Harper. I'm at 2145 Lower River Road, which some of you might know from the old Chris Smith property. So down just a little ways. I'll be brief, there's not much I can add. I'm kind of getting up to speed myself, but when they were talking about the dogs, like I said, I'm just a few parcels down. I'm one of the parcels that are prohibited from having dogs on the property because of the elk migratory. Over the years, there were some things that, that I would have liked to have done that would have impacted the elk migratory situation. So stayed away from, tried to be very respectful of the area, of my neighbors. And it is a beautiful place up there. I can see why people would want to go up there, but one of the reasons that it maintains that beauty and purity is because it's not utilized so massively. And I look at some of the public trails around here and think, yeah, they want to get up and see what we see because they've impacted the areas that they're in now just so greatly that the wildlife isn't there. The bikers on the road that refuse to use the bike path, that ride 2 or 3 abreast and don't let you by. I just don't see any of that getting better. It'll only get worse, and it'll be utilized by people who don't understand the area, don't understand how it works, and some of them won't care about our privacy, and they won't really, they'll kind of blow in and blow out. I'm sure in the beginnings there'll be a huge impact, and it probably could level off. But I think that everybody that's spoken today is probably like me, saying just spend a little time, study it a little further, think about the impact before the purchase of the land. I feel like once the land's purchased, things kind of get pushed through a little more easily without a lot more thought because it's more of a done deal. So that's what I would ask is just a little more thought, a little more study before the purchase is allowed to happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Perry, did you want to speak?
I'm gonna make sure all the locals had a chance to speak, so. I hope I'm not in front of anybody. I'm Perry Will, Area Wildlife Manager out of Glenwood Springs Area 8, which encompasses Pitkin County, Eagle County, Upper Roaring Fork, Eagle Valley. We want to come today because, talk a little bit, and I want to introduce Taylor Elm. Some of you may know Taylor. He's our land use specialist. My land use specialist. He knows how to do GIS. He knows everything. He's a great asset. So we appreciate him. But number one, I want to thank this board for recognizing Kevin Wright for his great contribution he's done to the wildlife resource for Pitkin County. So thanks a bunch. That meant a lot. I sent pictures of that on to our upper echelon and our agency, and they said that is a first for a wildlife employee that they knew of. So that's great. It meant a lot to Kevin. It meant a lot to our agency, and our new director was just floored by your actions. So thank you. Back to the task at hand. There's been a lot talked about, the wildlife resource, and that's why we're here. Is that, that. I think sometimes our public land, we're just loving it to death. And, I applaud all your efforts in the past, and maybe this is one too. But at first glance for me, it appears not. I mean, we keep wildlife has to have seclusion areas and solitude, for them to really benefit. And if we put up a trail every gulch, despite whether, maybe some of my comments should be more related to the management plan. But if we just keep doing it, there's no safe haven for them anymore. And this trail will get used. I think, as you all know from seeing other trails in the county, how it'll get used. And the frequency and duration is something we talk about. Trails, I don't care if you're riding an ATV, a bike, a horse, on foot, and then if you're on foot with a dog, which is the worst, okay? But you can look at all those and about the amount of impact they have on wildlife. And it all comes down to frequency and duration. If just George goes up there, okay, it's not too big of an impact. But if then it's George and me and Taylor and everybody else, and then that duration that you're there, the timing and the amount of the frequency of it really affects wildlife. And so you take a nice canyon like this that has some real good wildlife intrinsic values to it, that you can, and the research has told us that due to frequency and duration and a trail, and a foot trail, that you can actually impact a half mile each side of that to where they used it 100% of the time, and now they'll use that same area 20% of the time. So you're taking 80% of that wildlife habitat away from them. So that's, and on the river part, I just, I wouldn't want to be hypocritical. We're always looking for river access and fishing and that kind of stuff, so I don't want to be a hypocrite about that. But as far as the intrinsic wildlife values in that canyon and keeping traffic and people out of there, that, from our standpoint, it would be a benefit not to do that. When it comes to us and trails, I don't care if it's this particular parcel or anywhere else on the public land. Us as an agency always question, and I know the Forest Service does as well, but like, when's enough's enough? Or when is it too much? And I think in some of the areas, and I know this board hears a lot about it, whether it be Conundrum or Moon Bells or wherever, about the amount of traffic up there, and Forest Service faces those issues with how do you deal with it and how do you manage it. And so this is on a much, much smaller scale, of course, but the same issues can arise. So I'll turn it over to Taylor. I don't want to take too much time.
Well, I didn't have much else, but I know that one thing we talked about was seasonal closures and restrictions. They do sound good in theory. It's always one thing that we've talked about is the enforcement of that, and maintaining a full closure during those periods is the only way that that's going to be effective. And I know that just gets hard with limited staff and budgets and everything. And then, like everyone said, on that west or that southwest side of it there, I know it's
Williams Hill side?
Yeah, the Williams Hill. I know it's pretty infeasible to get in there, but I think from what we were talking about, definitely would be opposed to any access going in on that side.
From a winter range standpoint, for sure.
Right. And yeah, definitely the winter range concerns in the gulch there and on that eastern edge of the property, deer and elk severe winter range. And at the top of the gulch, we have a mapped elk production area or calving area.
Up on Williams?
No, on the east side, up on Albany Gulch.
Oh.
In Albany Gulch?
Could you show on maybe it doesn't show on this map, maybe on the greater map, where that
I actually
elk calving area would be?
We can get it.
Have a map.
We have a bigger picture of this.
We can get you a better map to talk about.
Yeah.
Display that.
I don't know how to put it up there.
Yeah, next one, we'll hand it around.
Yeah.
There you go, project the map.
Can you project it?
Yeah, we can put that up.
Project the
Oh.
map.
Just show it on the screen.
Geez, technology.
Unless you see it right on here already.
No, this is a habitat map.
It's over here.
I think it was.
Switch the button to the overhead.
This?
Is this the map you need?
Yeah, that's the map we need.
Yeah, next one, right?
Where'd it go?
No, that was deer.
Oh, sorry, dear. Let's go down.
You can
zoom in and you can tilt the light.
Glare right on there.
And I think if you tilt the light together.
There you go.
Yeah, so kind of just at the head of the gulch,
So
I
this is the
believe. Up
parcel
there.
right in here?
Yes. Hard to see there, but. And then the horizontal lines are elk severe winter range, and then that green kind of at the head of the gulch is the mapped production or calving area.
At the very top up
Yes.
there or down here?
At the very top.
Way up, way up.
So yeah, more talking about just the.
And that's winter? range?
No, that green area is production. Which
But
is
the other is winter?
Yes, yes.
By production, you mean like a calving,
Right.
fawning area?
Yeah. Which, yeah, it's a ways from the parcel itself, but just talking about that access, up the gulch, I think.
Can I ask a question? But we're hearing that it's a box canyon, so now on one hand, we're hearing you can access or we can't. So could they access those wildlife habitat areas of concern through the box canyon or not?
Yeah, once you're into the mouth of it, yes.
You can get up there.
Well, it'd be an impact once you just enter the mouth of the canyon. That's what I'm.
You're impacting the calving, the production area way up high in the national forest. I just want a clarification.
Yeah, probably not at the mouth of the canyon, but if you get up there, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I guess this would be a good opportunity if any of us have questions for Parks and Wildlife.
Well, I just have a question, because I think a lot of these comments would be pertinent if this purchase goes through and we develop a management plan. So, Parks and Wildlife has been involved in all of our management plans in the past, whether it be Trosty property, Rio Grande, the Glacier property. We've looked at instituting a lot of the recommendations, but you talk about enforcement of closures, winter closures, protection. How's that worked?
Well, thank you, George. I think on some of this, I mean, how does it work as far as enforcement?
Well, how's it work? How is, with your input, with the concerns about protecting wildlife in terms of improving the habitat, looking at what has developed in terms of our master plans, whether it be the Grosty Park property, the Glacier property, or Rio Grande, how does that actually work? Has it been successful?
Yes, and I say I applaud your efforts in the past. Yes, some of those properties lend themselves better to create better habitat for wildlife than maybe this particular small sliver parcel. But no, not here judging the open space at all. I mean, you guys have done a great job in the past. But when Taylor talked about the enforcement on timing restrictions, we struggle, and there's a huge frustration, I think, on many people's part, but and I'll speak only from us, there's a huge frustration as far as violation of closures. And I'm not just saying that. We have game camera, trail camera proof that those closures are getting violated. But, so there is a frustration there. And I know that was one, Kevin talked to both of us about this particular parcel. It's like, the darn, and he's since retired, but the timing restrictions, he was very concerned about. If there was timing restrictions on there, if they would get violated. And again, it comes down to frequency and duration, even on that, if they are being violated. But those are even more critical times during calving or fawning time periods.
Can I ask?
Dale has a response to that.
Well, not so much response. I'm just curious, Barry, whether when Kevin talked about timing restrictions or when you guys talked about it, have you thought about what the timing might look like, or is that something that still remains to be studied?
That remains, but I mean, obviously, we have the December 1st, for winter closure, and then into June for calving closures. Deer, even further into that, it's like July 15th is what we like. Basically talking about the middle of summer, but to really protect deer, that's what you need to do. But yeah, that's something we can work in the management plan. That's why I say some of my comments maybe are more suited for a management plan, as Joyce pointed out.
Patty?
Steve, just if I could add quickly, on the closures that open space is responsible for, we do take those very seriously. We have cameras up on Sky Mountain Park, for example, and I don't believe we're seeing significant numbers of violations up there, but we deal with them pretty strictly when we find them. Would you?
Well, and this year we had 7 violations on Sky Mountain Park, and considering how early the spring came in April, and May did turn into a wet month, but it was totally snow-free up there for a while, and to only have 7 people total in 4 different trips, violate is to us is a success. I mean, that is a low amount of people, and it's 2,100 acres up there, so and once we got pictures of people, we go and try to find them.
Yeah, I have a question, and I understand the concerns, especially about management of closures, but if this was in private hands and if, it's up for sale, could be bought by somebody who want to develop a significant parcel there, pretty significant development, which brings with it, as we know, its own impacts of services, landscaping, landscapers, all the stuff that comes with a new home, after the construction, even the ongoing services and the ongoing traffic flows. And our ability then to we would have no ability, you would have no ability to manage the access to that canyon that is directly associated with this property. And I'm not sure about the other accesses as far down as the Phillips Trailer Court, how people can access those easements without having to trespass on private land to get to those easements, to get there, and how far the distance is. I'm not sure.
That's all public land.
No, to get to it might not be public. You have to have an access to that public land, which is kind of what we're thinking about here with some management and some controls if we do choose to purchase it. So, there's a balance there. Does the private development is where we would have no enforcement opportunities because it has the direct access into those federal lands, or does a public ownership that would at least have an attempt to manage access and closures, which I think would be very key to that property. So that's part of what's going to be part of my decision here is how do we balance that? And that's what we try to do all the time.
Sure. Please, and that, the reason I'm here today is because we do have some wildlife resource concerns there.
And we like hearing from you.
So, Perry, there's the Albany Kittle Trail that runs up high there from, the Sloan's Peak vicinity. Does the Forest Service or the BLM, to your knowledge, have any restrictions on when people can go on that trail up above there? They can go any time, go in the winter when there might be elk. Go right into the elk grazing or anything.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Rachel?
Thanks. I was going to ask a kind of a similar question, and thank you, Patty, for the way you brought it up. But if this was a private parcel and someone redeveloped it to their ability, they could do backyard snowmobiling tracks and tracks right up into the canyon. And so there wouldn't be anything in the management plan of that or the Forest Service plans for that land that would prohibit someone, a family, from snowmobiling up there on a regular basis.
No, if it's commercial use, then it's different.
Yeah, then I'd have to get permitted.
Okay.
But, if I could follow up, we've heard some really good comments here today and a lot to think about. And I have further comments I would go into later, but I could see, there's opportunities, there's times when you can purchase open space lands and not make it into a trail system or not make it open. We've bought conservation easements on properties where there's no public access whatsoever, just to maintain them in either agriculture or something else. And
whole backside of North Star.
yeah, so there's considerable latitude about what is the final outcome of a purchase, given the types of comments we've heard and what occurs during a management plan process. I mean, it strikes me as a bit of an uneasy balance for people to say, I've been there, it's beautiful, don't let anybody else go there. I'd like to still continue to go there myself only. And, you know, I don't know if it's been agreements from neighbors, you call up, can I go through your backyard to get up there, or how that occurs, or walking up these other easements. But it does strike me as awkward to say, I like to enjoy this gem in my backyard, please don't let anybody else find it. And, you know, that's hard. I live in Hunter Creek. We have lots of visitors to the Hunter Creek Trail, and I could just have imagined if the homeowners on Red Mountain and others had said, don't buy that Hunter Creek Valley, don't buy those in holdings, who needs that? Or don't buy Smuggler, and all the people who go by Patty's home every day walking or hiking up there. And they're our neighbors too. You know, we're all neighbors within this county. It's not just about a smaller intermediate neighborhood. At the same time, the concerns about the preservation of the wildlife, and not everywhere needs to be explored, is really very accurate. And I think those are both very legitimate concerns. But I just wanted to point out that the purchase of a property does not imply commercialization. It does not imply a year-round trail system. It doesn't imply a trail system at all. And I think that items such as the river access that were brought up are important to the public and the community. And I personally regret that throughout Colorado, there's lots of rivers you can't touch or see. You know, the waters belong to all the people of Colorado, but you can't access them or you can't get in them. That's a challenge. So I can see wanting some further investigation. I will leave it to the board to help convince me whether that should be before moving forward or after moving forward. You know, we even need to investigate these easements you discussed. Just because people are using them now doesn't mean that there's public access. You know, if it's an easement for a utility line, they're not likely to have said, and it's a public trail underneath. You know, they're across public property. I don't know if those easements are legitimate access or not, and we would have to investigate that through our department to come up with a firm conclusion on that. There's lots of easements out there that people use all the time that are not really trails, you know, usually alongside ditches in Red Mountain and things like that. So I'll just leave it at that, but you know, sometimes leaving it alone is the worst thing you can do. Sometimes intervening is the worst thing you can do. But when you have an opportunity to intervene in the right way and with the input of the neighbors and the concerns, I think it can be really valuable. I hate to see, and you know, it was mentioned briefly by George, but creating more TDRs that we have to transfer off the canyon side, the Highway 2 side, because it's already, quote, a subdivided lot, and the next purchaser chooses to try to go in there and get a right to build something. You know, there are those issues. I realize it's not land that we're going to use for anything. We're not going to create a trail up there through that. But it doesn't mean that it wouldn't become a whole series of TDR sites that we have to transfer development rights off of or face that sort of shoot the puppy negotiation that we're going to try and put a house up there. So we'll just go from there. But I really can't think of how many assets that have enhanced all of our property values through open space purchases that somewhere along the way a neighbor felt, this is not good for my neighborhood, this isn't me, I like to enjoy the trails in your neighborhood, send more people over there, but please no trails in my neighborhood. And you know, if that prevailed across the county, we wouldn't have trails in Redstone, we wouldn't have trails in Castle Creek, we wouldn't have access. It was only 10 years ago, or maybe a little longer, where the public was outraged about how many accesses to their public lands were being closed off by private property owners. And we couldn't reach this incredible heritage around us and surrounding us. I think that those are issues we need to balance. So I'll just leave it there for now. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Terry, for coming in. We appreciate your input, always. It's good to see you. Are there any other members of the public who would wish to speak at this time? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board.
First, I would suggest we close the public hearing at this point.
Okay.
So we don't continue
Okay.
for.
I was thinking that possibly also. So I'm going to close the public hearing. There won't be any more public comment. And then we'll reopen it when we get to the next item.
Can I just ask staff, I have a timing question as far as the time frame of purchase. Are we, when a property comes up for sale, especially now how properties are turning rather quickly, do we have a time frame here? If we were to delay for 2 weeks, or could we be in
We're
jeopardy?
scheduled to close on July 6th, but if the commissioners decide that we should postpone that,
We have another meeting on the 24th.
then we could do that.
I know George was up there, and I can ask George, is it worth the board taking a site visit, George, do you think? Or at least seeing the area that's already disturbed and what we've seen pretty much through the photographs, what's up the canyon, which is absolutely gorgeous. And maybe we need to see the other part of the parcels. You were there, George.
Well, I mean, to see the river access parcel, which is very easily accessible, may be beneficial. To just walk up a quarter mile, once you leave private property onto the U.S. Forest Service land, that may be beneficial.
And seeing the disturbed area on Chuck Cherrick's old house. and
Well,
all that.
that's hearsay in terms of what can or can't be developed. What I understand is there are development rights that have been granted to that
Right,
property.
right.
So that's another issue, but.
But just seeing what's existing now would be, I think would be beneficial. I mean, the board as a whole has to make that decision, but we do have it, it's not like impending doom is next week or tomorrow. Gives us a little time to play with.
Well, you kind of asked when we're scheduled for closing. When does the contract expire is perhaps more appropriate.
We do have a contingency in this contract that would require the commissioners to approve this week. Now, we can ask for an extension on that, but I would recommend that you not do that. This, as Patty mentioned, that we're in kind of a hot market, and I think we were fortunate to get this under contract, so
At the value that we did.
I would recommend not to jeopardize that, to go ahead and approve this today. We always have this clause that allows for disposition, and John has some suggestions of how that might be strengthened somewhat, so that if in the end of this whole journey the county decided that it didn't want to have this portal, you can
Any of it, or pieces and parts.
pieces and parts. Well, personally, I can't imagine the county would conclude that the river section or the Williams Hill section shouldn't be retained for the reasons that Rachel mentioned, that they're kind of development time bombs the way they are. But certainly all the comments I've heard, I feel could be adequately addressed by the management planning and the potential property disposition flexibility that we have.
So technically what you're saying, to expand it, is we could move forward with the purchase today, and then upon a site visit or further discussion or further due diligence, we could find that we wanted to keep one side, we could put back on the market the other side, or we could, any configuration of the.
And with restrictions.
And with restrictions for the sale of it, if we chose to go in that direction. For private development. Okay, so by creating new language in the current recital ordinance in front of us, John, it's 3 and 4 that we would expand the language, or 4?
Paragraph 3 of the recitals.
Paragraph 3, we would expand that to keep that door open for the due diligence and anything we might find, that we could come back and address that.
No, it does not relate to due diligence. If
Well,
the
I mean
board-
due diligence, just using that phrase, but anything we were to find, like if we went up and did a site visit and said, we don't want to keep this section, or we want to keep that section. Does that make sense?
Altering paragraph 3 of the recital would preserve a greater flexibility of the board to dispose of the property later.
Okay, that's all I needed to know. Thank you, John.
Let's see, Dale, Dale, maybe, all three of you, I'll put this out to you. There were a couple of issues that, one had to do with the debris flow. And have we looked into that at all? I know down on the house that sits at Lazy Glen, the log house that Mr. Yarborough lived in, that was actually moved from the other side on the property that we have purchased. Because of debris flow coming down, the part on the lower, what they call the North River, Lower
The other
River.
parcel? You're talking about totally different
The
parcel.
one way down Lower River Road that we
Oh, dark.
across from Lazy Glen. No, the one across
Oh,
from
no,
Lazy
no.
Glen.
Who's my
They
husband?
actually
Dr.
took the house
Kiriana.
from there and moved it over on the highway side because of debris flow coming down off of there, you know, sometime way in the past, but.
Well, Steve, what I can tell you about it, what we know about it came from community development's files on this. And if you look at this area here, this gentleman that lives next door, I'm forgetting your name, Art. Paul.
Yes, 2489 Lower.
Okay. Paul, as he mentioned, Mr. Cherrick built this berm here in order to protect a building envelope that was approved by community development that sits here. And that development envelope was approved for 5750, apparently with the potential to land a TDR there. So that's how all that came about, is that Chuck Cherrick was trying to perfect the conditions of his ComDev approval and built this berm here.
Was it permitted? Was it a permitted berm or illegally built?
It was a questionable
No,
permit.
we're still, that issue was resolved in my favor. So I don't, you know,
Does
that is
that
not
divert, does it divert stuff this way or that way, do you know, Dale?
Well, Paul probably knows.
I could clear all that up. Yay and Associates has done it.
Excuse me, wait a minute, Marty.
Well,
we're gonna try to resolve this here, and if we
You have
need to,
misinformation, you can't resolve.
but if we need to ask you, we'll call on you, just.
so my understanding, as I said, is the debris flow is going to come out of Albany Gulch. Cherrick was attempting to sort of sanitize his building envelope here and built the berm that's there. As far as what Open Space and Trails might decide to do, of course I'm speculating because all that's subject to this planning process that we haven't been able to do yet, but at least from the outset I wouldn't predict that we would be interested in changing that, what's already on the ground there at all, unless it turns out that it was built without a permit or there's some pending violation there, but we haven't seen that in community development's files on this property.
Patty?
I was on the board at the time. I remember what we did, and I remember it going in the neighbor's favor, and that we were trying to address it with Mr. Cherrick to remediate portions of that were deflecting portions of the debris flow onto the neighboring property. As to where that stands today, and I think that was one of the issues when Mr. Cherrick lost the property, was that he didn't have the resources to mitigate that issue. As far as how that stands with community development, you're right, there should be something in writing with community development as part of the outcome of the Board of Commissioners meetings way back when. So Paul has his hand up there, but.
Just I can tell you that.
Just a minute.
Okay.
If we call on you, then I have to reopen the public hearing. And the board, do we want to try to get further answers on this right now, or leave it to Michael?
I think, you know, there are numerous aspects of this property. We've heard a lot. And there are numerous future aspects of this property, and those will be dealt with in a management plan. We can't solve those problems here and now. We can look at the assets of the property. We can look at the liabilities of the property in terms of purchasing. But the hazards, the management comes later.
Well, $2.6 million
So-
and deciding
so-
later.
Excuse me, sir.
It's important for the public to know that this is a formal process, and that this formal process can't be your kitchen table where you're arguing with your family. This is a different format, and you can be ejected. So those are the things that I think we should consider. We should consider the liabilities, the assets, as they've been presented by Dale and his staff, and also by the public. They think it has some liabilities, primarily. Although we have letters from other members of the public who don't mention those liabilities, who actually say that there's a lot of assets here. Going further, the management plan will look at debris flows and what other hazards there are. That's how we deal with it. So, and that's how I'd like us to deal with it now.
Steve?
Yeah.
for discussion purposes, I would like to make a motion to approve an ordinance authorizing acquisition of the Deer Creek Ranch property.
I'll second that.
Okay,
And
Further-
actually, Rachel, we were going to, or John suggested.
Yes.
Some,
I will add that, I'm sorry, thank you. Including the amended language in paragraph 3 of the resolution. Section-
Do you have it?
You haven't heard it yet, so it's.
You described it, but as described by
sometimes we
Johnny.
trust you, John.
That's
So
nice,
you can-
it's
you
flattering
can
and all,
write
but
that now.
should sometimes. The amendment to the recital number 3 within the proffered resolution is something that I would offer to the board simply to preserve a greater flexibility of disposing of a portion of the property in the future. The Home Rule Charter allows, with appropriate consideration of the BOCC and recommendation from Open Space and Trails, the ability to convey partial interests of property acquired with the restricted fund. Only partial interest. You can't dispose of the entirety of the asset acquired without a vote and a replacement acquisition. So, if we describe, and also with the limitation that if we reserve, so to speak, for the commissioners to dispose of a partial interest in the property later, that enough of the property that is originally acquired to accomplish the preservation of conservation values and open space values is retained to continue to preserve those ends, such that by calling out that, for example, we're acquiring this property to preserve agricultural activity on the property, and then later to determine that we want to dispose of the portion of the property which is northeast of the county right-of-way, we would be limited in doing so, simply because we would have to maintain some of the property that's already in agriculture. So, in consideration of the limitation in the charter, if the board at some future date wants to preserve for itself flexibility to dispose of the property or a large portion of the property to the northeast of the county right-of-way and preserving, say, for example, a trail corridor or some other benefit, then what we need to do is just amend the recital number 3 such that the Deer Creek property possesses scenic natural wildlife recreation and delete the word agriculture from that. All of the other attributes associated with the property listed can be found on other aspects of the property, and therefore if the county wanted to dispose of that large portion, we would be free to do so.
But did you say if we wanted to keep it and do so for ag, we could do so?
Yes, you can always retain whatever you buy.
All right, I want to make sure we weren't taking
And
it out.
you don't need to enumerate every particular use, but if you have made a legislative determination, which is what this ordinance is, that you are acquiring the property for preservation of agricultural use, then you have to do it.
Okay. So as maker of the motion, I will clarify that it is recital number 3. The language is modified so that the term agricultural is deleted, and that's all that's needed.
I think that'll preserve your flexibility.
Okay, thank you.
I accept that change.
Steve, further
Yes.
comment? You know, a lot of people have kind of said they appreciate that it's a difficult job at the table and there are difficult decisions being made. I hope that that's sincere. And, you know, I'd just like to say that, you know, I was in the auditoriums and fighting to make sure Highway 82 didn't bisect Old River Road and your valley. You know, there was a huge push by the Department of Transportation at the time to have 2 parallel roads, incoming and outgoing. And, you know, it was quite a while ago, but I was there and standing at BOCC where they had the hearings and with Wayne Ehlert saying, no, you know, you don't need to do this. This board did turn down a growth facility in this area. And, you know, there's a lot of the concerns of the neighbors that are listened to and taken quite seriously. And I take seriously the concerns that have been put forward regarding the future uses of this property and how it might impact your neighborhood. At the same time, I do look at the greater opportunities for preservation and the greater opportunities to prevent development that could be on the scale of 8,300 square feet, or 87 of the approved plus a TDR, and the potential of applications for development on these two, based on our land use code and the law of where people could say this is a subdivided lot already and it has a right to its own 5750 or 5750. And I think the opportunity to extinguish those is very important. I said it earlier, we do not need to create a trail system on parcels that we buy. And I don't know that a seasonal closure would be sufficient. I don't know any of those things now, but I'd like to work them out in the master plan. And we've spent with the Glacier property, which seemed a little more straightforward perhaps, over 14 months to accommodate and work with the neighbors. I can't even tell you how long it was on the Smuggler Mountain master plan, or other master plans like Sky Mountain. And I think I've heard a lot of fear. I've heard fear of strangers, fear of other county neighbors, and I don't know that those fears are well grounded. So I'm working at a national level with any number of groups who are trying to oppose the privatization of all the public land surrounding us. You know, I don't know if that's an issue people have been paying attention to, but it's pretty vigorous to say that the federal public land should all belong to the states, and the states should sell or manage or lease those to pay for their own maintenance in the future. And that's growing across the West. It was funded in the last appropriation bills from the federal level, and there's an ongoing caucus for that. And it's a priority of the National Association of Counties for all reasons I don't understand. And so it's very odd to me that we're potentially losing our sacred public lands to state and privatized ownerships. At the same time, we're worried about whether or not we have access to them and whether we can deny people access to them. So there's a lot of things kind of mixed up all in one in this parcel. But I am not trying to diminish anyone's concern about the parcel or their neighborhood or the land. But there are always the unknowns, and the unknowns of private development, as I said, I see it kind of regularly on this parcel right outside of town, where it has become a snowmobile track, a snowmobile trade, and then they just have private snowmobiling parties all the time, and this could become snowmobiling up in the canyon, which is far more detrimental to that severe winter range. And there's nothing in the travel management plan, unfortunately, to prohibit that. So perhaps some of these items seem more in your face and right now because it's the public moving it forward. But we could end up in this room with a big hearing on all the negatives that are happening out of private development as well. And so I'm going to support this going forward and make the commitment to a lengthy, vigorous, open, and sincere management plan process.
Michael?
Yeah, Perry spoke, is Perry still here?
No, they left.
Perry spoke about the, and many of you weren't here for that. We issued a proclamation for Kevin Wright, who was the wildlife officer. And Kevin, in his acceptance of that proclamation for 30 years of service, said that he wasn't aware of any county in Colorado, that had greater concern for wildlife than this county. That says a lot. And as Perry said, we've worked together on those wildlife concerns. There's tension in that. I mean, but who's going to be the first person to say, Pekin County's overpopulated, I'm going to be the first person to leave. And I expect you all to leave because we have wildlife concerns. It's not going to happen. So how do we deal with it? We deal with it with rational planning and concern for wildlife and for neighbors. And if you go back to 1893, this was unsettled land. Then it was a ranch. The entirety of the valley was a ranch. And each of you participated in the breaking up of this ranch, right? You each now have a house where elk once slept. Okay, I'm not trying to make you feel guilty, but that's the progress of our county. So, in light of that progress, what do we try to do? We try to manage that progress as best we can. We're the gardeners of the county. We're going to try to have people live in harmony. We're going to try to have animals live in harmony with us. And we're going to try to encourage an ethic that we care for each other. And this is part of it. This effort is part of it. And if we're the best county to be concerned about wildlife, and part of that has been open space and trails, then I have to say, I'm willing to go ahead. That endorsement, my knowledge of open space and trails, I'm willing to go ahead with this on the basis of a management plan, on the basis of creating a better neighborhood for you and a better county for all of us. This is going to be a gem.
Steve? I'm just going to add to it shortly. I know there's many of you in the room who, Marty, would you just wait one sec? I just want to kind of point this out to all who spoke. I know there's many of you who don't believe the county does things right very often, if ever. And I'm hoping that this management plan at the end of the day, with your input, I'm asking you all to be involved, will show you that the county does do things right. And this is going to be one of those very right things that we do. Thanks, Marty. Thanks, Linda, for not leaving.
The discussion that I've gleaned from this is the conflict of private access versus public access, development versus conservation. This is a problem, I used this as an example last time. If you look at the example of our rivers, and Rachel alluded to this, one only has to go up the Frying Pan River, Gold Meadow waters, to discover how difficult it is for the public to find a place to be able to fish. So much of that has been closed off by private owners. So much of that has been leased by private owners to commercial outfitters. And so is that a legacy we want to leave for our kids and our grandkids, that unless you own property, you're the only ones that can enjoy our public lands? I don't think so. California, Hawaii, they have in their land use codes that owners must allow easements to those public beaches. I don't think those landowners, their property rights have been abused, but it's allowed the public who pays for our federal lands to be able to access those public lands. And if we were to cut off all accesses due to private property owners, where would we be? Would we be better off? Maybe if you're the adjacent landowner, you might be better off, but maybe not. I think if you look at your valuations in this county, one reason why your valuations are much higher than our neighboring counties is because of our environment that we've established here, the protections we put in place in terms of our land use codes, in terms of our wildlife, in terms of protection of our air quality and our water. Not a lot of counties can say that. And that goes directly back to your land values as a property owner. This property can be developed. It could be developed with several homes, possibly. And is that going to lead to better conservation of public lands? Maybe, maybe not, depends on the owners. But owners change hands in this county quite often for high-end properties. So how do you protect that? You protect that through a conservation effort. There was an attorney here last time at the first reading who talked about trying to equate this to wilderness. And I agree with that. And one of the reasons you fight to establish wilderness areas is because you want to protect these unique areas for future generations to enjoy in perpetuity. And so, in this case, it is a wilderness. And it could be managed as a wilderness, not allowing motor vehicles, not allowing winter access. There's lots of opportunities to look at how best to conserve this land. And that's the process that I believe our Open Space and Trails Department has been extremely successful in. Starting from our most recent acquisition of Glacier Ranch, over 400 acres, and there was opposition by adjacent landowners for open space to purchase those lands for almost the same reasons. They didn't want to see increased traffic. They didn't want to see people going up on trails adjacent to their lands. But in the end, through a very long process, 14-month process, those landowners, as well as user groups, including Division of Parks and Wildlife, were able to come up with a management plan that's going to allow access for recreationalists, allow agriculture to continue, and also allow the protection of our wildlife and increase that wildlife habitat. And certainly the Crown has as much wildlife, critical wildlife habitat area as any place in this county. And so that was a very considerable concern of the BOCC when we looked at purchasing that land, because we wanted to conserve it for wildlife, we wanted to conserve it for future generations to enjoy. So I would just ask that those of you that are here, and those of you that could not make it because your neighbors are not in town yet, to become involved in a very open, public, transparent management plan to decide how best to conserve and utilize this property, not just for you, but for the entire public.
I'm going to support this purchase today based on Dale's recommendation, and I too feel that the management plan, which hasn't been decided yet at all, would be completely adequate in protecting this property. And I agree with you, Rachel, that the management plan might be to not allow public access or to have a permit system that only a limited number of people, to lessen the frequency and the duration of people going up there. When I see the photographs, it's obvious to me that people are already going up there. The trail's pretty well beaten out, and judging from the letters we've gotten from lots of people, like, I have ridden my horse up there. A lot of different people have been up there. I've never been up there, and I've lived here more than half a century, and I always wondered what was up there, but that was the Kent Ranch, and you don't go through somebody else's property to go somewhere where, you know, without permission. So I respect people's property rights, and I don't go through it. I also respect public land. I virtually never go to Maroon Lake because it is so heavily overused. It does not need one more person going up there. And I've been to Maroon Lake a few times, and I don't know if I'll ever go back again, even though it's public land. And to me, you know, some land sometimes needs to be left alone and not over-visited and overused. Love to death, because if too many people went up in this valley, the Deer Creek Valley, it would, you know, drive the wildlife away, at least during parts of the year. I'm sure the management plan would have seasonal closures even if there is public access part of the time. So I too would urge all of the neighbors to be actively involved in developing the management plan. And don't presume that just because the county's purchasing it, that certain things will happen, like that there will be a parking lot down by the river for fishermen access, or that there will be a boat launch, or that there will be a big parking lot up where it's obviously already been a parking lot with Chuck Cherrick's construction equipment. Because all that stuff needs to really be decided, and what is the best use for the property. And I still hold open, and I have more reasons now to say, you know, buy it now, perhaps sell part of it later. And I really see the value of being able to sterilize the parts. I had thought, well, that's totally not buildable over there. But then Rachel, you pointed out that, and it has happened before, people will split it up and say, you know, I want a TDR because this is an unbuildable lot. And we don't need any more of those kind of land deals where, you know, people making something out of something that's
Has nothing.
has no value besides being a beautiful place to look at and a great place for elk to browse on in the wintertime. So those are my thoughts right now, and I am going to support this. And we do have a motion on the table right now. It's been moved and seconded to approve this acquisition. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye. Thanks,
Okay.
thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Thank you for your input, everybody. And we're going to take a 15-minute break right now
Thank you.
before our next item.
15 minutes?
Yeah, let's do 15 minutes. Been here 2.5.
Yeah.
Okay, welcome back to the Board of County Commissioners' regular meeting on Wednesday, June 10th. The next item on our agenda is a resolution accepting Recycling Resources Economic Opportunity. The acronym for that is RREO. Grant from the Colorado Department of Public Health Environment. We have Kathy Hall and Brian Pitt here. You're frequent visitors at our table.
Hi, I'm Kathy Hall, Solid Waste Manager. Yes, CDPHE has awarded the Solid Waste Center grant of $201,765 for the expansion of our scraps, food waste, composting, and collection program. And what that grant will entail will allow us to purchase multiple dozens of bear-proof metal bins, as well as some plastic indoor type of containers for the collection of food waste. These bins will be made on loan to participants in this program, and our target audience is restaurants, businesses, homeowner associations interested in collecting food waste and diverting it from the trash. In addition, the grant will also allow us to buy a bagging machine, which we will be able to bag our compost and allow it for retail sale. It's a more convenient option for people who only need a small quantity. And we will also be expanding our education and outreach program on our compost and food waste collection.
No changes from this since our first reading? And this is second reading, public hearing, is that right? Yes.
Michael?
What's the bag gonna be? Is it gonna be a recyclable bag?
We have to research it a little bit. We originally put in the grant a burlap type of sack, the coffee bean type sack. It's not really functional with these bagging machines. So it'll likely be, like you see at a garden center, the plastic type bag.
Plastic type bag.
We'll research it a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's the dilemma that we're all caught in, right? We want to do the right thing, so we do this, and we still have something that is, you know. So I applaud your efforts. I think it's a great idea, and hopefully everybody will recycle those damn bags.
Maybe there's a cornstarch bag too that would be big and suitable, and as long as people don't get the stuff and then set it out in a rainstorm.
Yeah, it dissolves, yeah. So we'll research, yeah.
Yeah.
Just so Michael knows, I reuse those bags. I might not be able to recycle them, but I can reuse them.
What do you reuse them for?
I reuse them for things that I can't compost or recycle.
So
As trash bags.
As trash bags.
as trash bags.
I put a liner in my composting bag, a composting bin with one of those that I can just dump it in. So I find a purpose.
So there's always something useful, even though it isn't apparent
Right.
on the face of it. Thank you, Patty.
I wanted to share that with you.
It's a public hearing.
This is a public hearing. Are there any members of the public who would wish to comment on this at this time? Okay, I don't see any comments. Bring it back to the board.
I would make a motion to approve a resolution accepting Recycling Resources Economic Opportunity, RROE, grant from the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the grant, accepting the grant. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah. You know, this is maybe a broad comment, not just for you guys, but I sure hope that we send a really nice thank you letter to the Department of Public Health and Environment. You know, we always get those nice grant letters back from folks, and it would be really nice to make sure that we let them know this is well appreciated. It's a great idea. Thank you.
We could send them some dirt too, or some paint. Or
Yeah, write them up to take a picture.
Also, I think this is a really good opportunity to have more of our food waste recycled or brought back so it could be composted instead of going into the landfill. And I was pretty astonished yesterday that when you gave the figure of what percentage of our landfill items are actually food waste that could be diverted into the compost operation. So I hope people really get on board this program more than they have already and take advantage of it. So so we have the, as successful of a program as we can.
Steve, I think we should give a scraps award to this, is it the St. Regis that does, how much did you say?
5,000 pounds a month diverting food.
Yeah, we should come up with a scraps award. It's registered. Okay.
Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And don't leave. Next on the agenda is formal resolution and budget supplemental for county landfill operations.
Great. I'll handle this one. I'm Brian Pettit, Public Works Director. And this has been in front of the board several times, and this is to bring in landfill operations in-house. And this resolution would appropriate the money that staff needs to acquire the equipment and the labor required to complete this operation. This has been completed by Heartland for over 15 years now, and this is an opportunity for the county to save money and gain operational efficiencies by bringing it in-house. By approving this resolution, it would give us the $2.985 million that would be required to, really most of it's going to the equipment, and some of it going to the labor as well.
Oh, I had a question on the spreadsheet on the recitals, and it talks about a vacant recycle technician position, where there's a savings of $61,000 for not having that person on board. Is this going to be a permanent thing that you're not going to fill that position, but we're hiring 4 new people for the landfill operation, or do you anticipate filling that position eventually?
We anticipate filling that position. That'll be one of the 4. It won't be a vacant position next year.
So this applies to just this year's budget, getting through the end of the year?
Correct.
Okay.
We're hoping to have 3 to 4 additional people on site by November to start training and getting up to speed with the county operations. So Connie structured it that way to use that vacant money that we have in the budget this year to cover those 2 months of salary for people.
Can I ask a question?
Michael?
So you outline what vehicles you're going to purchase. And so let's just go over what they are. So what's a compactor?
Compactor is that large machine. It has spiked wheels, and that's what makes the multiple passes over the waste. And it does exactly what its name says. It compacts the waste for airspace savings.
And the county doesn't have one at this time?
No, it's owned by Heartland currently.
Then it also has a dozer blade on it too, for
Pushes trash
pushing
and-
trash up to get the right grade and everything.
And a loader, what's a loader?
A loader, we currently have one on site. It's the
But
rubber
you
tire.
say you're going to purchase one.
Yeah, we're purchasing a second one. We have one on the way that was purchased this year. We will be purchasing a second one. That's the rubber tire loader with the scraper blade, has multiple attachments.
And what do you use it for?
Loading vehicles with aggregate, compost, moving dirt around the site.
Okay, and an excavator, what's an excavator?
Excavator is the arm with the track hoe, the arm with the grip.
Bucket.
Yeah, it's a bucket. We need Jonah here. And that is used to pick up C&D material and place it into the grinder. It can be used for when we grind wood waste. You pick up the wood material and place it into the grinder.
And then we have, did I say, excavator is the arm thing. Now we come to the C&D. C&D stands for what?
Construction and demolition debris.
What's a C&D grinder?
It is a large machine with big giant teeth in there, and you throw that in and it comes out as sort of a shredded, chewed up material.
And is it a mobile machine or is it a stationary machine?
It's on tracks.
It's on track, so you can move it around the landfill?
Diesel operated.
And diesel operated. And does it have an operator on it? Or how does that work?
There's not an actual operator sitting on it. There's a control panel. Some of the newer grinders, the operator has to be in the excavator, and then there's safety features. So if that operator exits the excavator, it shuts down.
So nobody sticks their head over and falls in?
Exactly.
A haul truck is,
Those are the large rubber tires you see on mining sites a lot.
and that's for what? For
Moving large quantities of material. Good example right now, we're crushing aggregate. So they're moving, once the aggregate's crushed, they're moving it to another location. We use it to move the compost piles over to the curing pad.
Okay, and a bulldozer, most people are familiar with that. A bulldozer just has a blade in the front?
It's a blade with the track.
And you push debris around with that?
Push debris, it helps, we have a borrow area for soil, which is a very shallow rock area. It's heavy enough to bust up that material to create cover dirt. Again, moving, if you have large piles to push on the landfill working face, it helps with the control of the landfill working face as well.
So those are about 6, 7 machines. Are we gonna hire 6 or 7 people, or we've already got those people?
We already have those people. Again, we have 5 operators currently on site, equipment operators, and additional hiring of 4.
Okay, thank you.
So that brings up a question in my mind. Part of the reason we'll have more staff on board is because we have to cover the landfill from opening to half an hour past closing in the afternoon. So you'd have kind of split shifts, I presume, with some people will start at 7 in the morning and quit at whatever time, and other people will come on and then work until half an hour past closing, and that sort of a thing. Is that what you anticipate?
We'll probably keep it the same way. We do 4 10-hour shifts, the operations crew, and they're on site at 6:30 in the morning until 4:30 in the afternoon. We'll probably shift that till they arrive at 7 till 5, just so they can get equipment warmed up and then have a half hour after closing. And then it'll be staggered across the week, so we are fully covered, even through Saturday operational hours.
Okay. So, yeah, and you also have to cover 6 days a week instead of...
Correct.
Okay. Michael?
That brings up something. I had the good fortune of being able to drive down Valley this morning and drive past the landfill. And there was a queue of trucks from the gate, and this was at 7:30 in the morning, approximately 7, to the highway. Is that a normal event?
During the summer lately, it's been extremely busy. So yeah, when you come up, right before the gate opens, they're lined up.
So does that tell us anything? Does it mean that we should be opening earlier and letting those people, if they want to get into the landfill at 7 o'clock in the morning, should they be able to get into the landfill?
It's, we have to limit it at some point. And I think if we open the landfill up at 7, there would be trucks lined up at 7 o'clock to reach the landfill. So regardless of what your timing is, unless you wanted to, have it extremely early in the morning, you're going to have people ready to go at that time. And
So I presume all those trucks were running, sitting.
Possibly.
It just seems like something you should brainstorm about. I was shocked, quite frankly. What do they have in their trucks at 7:30? Where have they been before 7:30 that their trucks need to be unloaded at the landfill?
A lot of times, they're running routes later, so they're not done by 4:30 when we close in the afternoon, so that it's first thing in the morning.
So the truck is full that the previous afternoon, and they want to get rid of it and keep working, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just interesting.
Yeah, that's a sort of a customer service thing that and maybe you could survey the main commercial customers and see what would be the hours if they had their ideal hours, when should you be open? That would be a way you could approach, like just figuring out if our hours are appropriate or if they should be adjusted.
Can I just, before we move it forward, again, what's happening on Saturday real quick?
Oh, that is the Pitkin County Field Day events. We're actually in partnership with City Aspen, Parks, Pitkin County, Aspen Tree, a number of individuals. But it's just an educational event, family activities. There's going to be speakers on composting, healthy soils, noxious weeds. We have a number of exhibitors related to sustainable gardening, sustainable living, healthy environment, and exhibitors. We have a food truck coming from Glenwood Springs, and he focuses on, his food offerings are sustainable meats, locally grown produce and vegetables. And then Aspen Tree will be, this is at Cozy Point Ranch, we'll be hosting the children's education part of the program, hands-on farm activities, their farm animals will be available, the alpacas, chickens, I've been told, and horses, so. Lots going on. It's from 9 a.m. Until about 2:30 p.m. in the afternoon, and it's free.
And it's at Cozy Point Ranch.
Cozy Point Ranch.
And it's Saturday the 13th.
Yes.
Just because these are on loop.
Yeah,
for so
Saturday the
long.
13th.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. So people stand out there at 9 o'clock going, what's going on?
Yes.
Saturday the 13th, this coming Saturday the 13th.
Mm-hmm.
And for those people not familiar with Cozy Point Ranch, it's located where?
On Highway 82, between where the landfill is and Snowmass Village. We will have some kind of signage or balloons to kind of indicate where you need to turn in. It's easy to
Park and back.
turn. And then we will have volunteers on site directing parking and
So
visitors.
is the parking gonna go in the main entrance to Cozy Point, or is it gonna go around the back on the, whatever the name of the count, the subdivision road is?
It goes in on the road where you go up to Brush Creek and you turn into the parking lot, because
Come
the
in.
front parking lot is very small.
Yeah.
So it is the west end entrance to
What's the
Cozy
name
Point.
of that road? I can't recall.
Juniper Hill.
Juniper Hill.
Juniper Hill. Juniper Hill.
Thank you, Lynn.
Is the sign on the highway, yeah?
Yep.
Okay. This is a public hearing. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on it at this time? Seeing none, I close the public hearing.
There's no motion
You
yet.
need a motion? A motion to approve a resolution providing supplemental appropriations to the 2015 Solid Waste Center budget for landfill operations.
Second.
Thank you, Mike.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the supplemental appropriations. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Then we're going to do a public service.
Okay, next we have open discussion. Lois, do you have anything?
Yesterday you asked about the public outreach efforts for the flood season that is, we're teetering on. So I asked Pat Bingham if she would come in and just give you a brief update. She's part of the incident management team working with public safety and who is one of the key people in doing that outreach.
So the rivers are raging. There's speculation as to when peak will be. We don't want to speculate, but it will be in the coming weeks. And so our team got together this week and we put out our first press release. Where it didn't get picked up in the papers today, I heard it on 2 radio stations on my commute up this morning, so it is being followed up on. We had just FYI, a tree down in the Slaughterhouse Rapid, it's called entrance exam before the falls today, a big tree. And we did a pit alert and got the word out to all the kayaking and rafting community, because it's a very dangerous situation in Slaughterhouse right now, very. And so patrol deputies are watching the rivers day and night on their patrols. It's a multi-jurisdictional effort, so we've got everyone from Aspen to Carbondale, including the Crystal River Valley, involved. And we're in touch with the Bureau of Reclamation about what they're doing in Root Eye and the reservoirs. And we don't want to speculate as to what the outcome of runoff will be. People are feeling optimistic right now, but the thing that the people worry about the most, the emergency officials worry about the most, are these short microburst thunderstorms that can take already swollen rivers and change things really quickly. We're not just worried about the rivers, but the mudslide situation and creeks and ditches and all of those kinds of things. So suffice to say that plans are in place, preparations are being made. People often inquire about sandbags that live near the river, and really the long time philosophy on that is if you feel that your property could be threatened with rising water, then it is your responsibility as a private property owner to have sandbags and sand and get your own. The sand and sandbags that the governments have are used mostly for infrastructure situations when we have something that's threatening a bridge or a road. Obviously, if it's a life, health, or safety emergency situation,
we'd certainly be there with, do whatever we can. But the sandbags that we have are not for public consumption unless there's a really serious emergency. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that, because I misunderstood that. But, so if the public does see a threat to a bridge abutment or from a ditch or from a culvert, they could contact Public Works, and Public Works would bring out, so.
Well, they should call 911.
911.
Yeah. We would like all calls.
To go through that channel?
To go through that channel, whether it's a serious emergency or not. If somebody sees a kayak going down the river upside down and nobody in it, call 911. If someone is a kayaker, and they go upside down and they're okay, please let us know that, the boat that we saw is yours and that there is no need for alarm.
And they can call 911 to do that also.
911, and we've been cleared to just go ahead and call dispatch 911, and that's the place to call with any concerns.
Rachel?
I would just say thank you, Pat, for getting the word out. Patty was remembering yesterday an older video you produced with Grassroots TV once on it, and perhaps we can get that running a little bit in these next 2 weeks. I understand tomorrow there's a chance of very heavy rain, 70%, and severe thunderstorms. And so it's that exact circumstance you've talked about of potential mudslide, rockfall. So I have my younger niece living with me, and I keep telling her, Colorado roads, you never know what's around the corner. Be careful, especially this time of year. So thank you for your help getting the word out.
You're welcome. And if anybody sees, trees coming up against bridge abutments and starting to cause that's another thing that they look for is clogs of trees and debris, because then that can quickly flood. So if anybody sees anything, those are our best sources, of just everybody's eyes and ears. And if we hear or see anything like today's tree in the river, we are going to go straight to the media with that. We'll go to Pitkin Alert, by the way. If you haven't signed up for Pitkin Alert, please do so, pitkinalert.com. And you will get messages straight to you if there's anything you need to know.
Also, if a culvert does get plugged and a creek is going over the road, which happened on Capitol Creek one time. It was just, the culvert was a little smaller than it is now, but do not try to drive through there, because the whole road might be washed out and you don't realize it, and people die every year in the United States from thinking they can drive through something safely, and they can't, and their car gets swept away and they're gone.
That's a great point, and that's the number one problem. People assume the road is still there, just 2 feet under the water, and the road has actually been washed away. So.
The water's powerful. It's more powerful than you think.
You know that.
All right.
Okay, thank you, Pat.
You're welcome. Okay, I had one other quick item. We are getting ready to sign an agreement for our meeting room with the Gantt for the time period that elections, and in November. The one question I have, November 3rd is election day, Tuesday, and typically we cancel that, and in the past we have also moved it to Thursday. This would be Thursday the 5th, so I wanted to get your input now so we can sign the contract, and if you want to meet on the 5th and don't want to meet on the 3rd, we can include that contract for our meetings moving those days. So those blue squares where it says meeting TBA at the bottom, those are the dates we're looking at. October 27, 28, November 3rd and 4th, and so I'm asking about moving the 3rd. November 10th and November 17th and 18th.
Rachel?
Yeah, I think it's important to maintain the tradition of not having a meeting on election day. Many people work on local, state, federal issues, and that's the end day. And it is somewhat possible to have a broadband question this year that some of us might be working on. So I think we should maintain that tradition. I don't know if it's possible to talk to them and see if we could just get an option for the 5th. And see if we can leave it as an optional, and I don't know if we'll need that work session time that day. I mean, that's what I simply don't know. And the other thing I was just kind of asking, I'm sure I'd imagine you've contacted the clerk's office about when they will need this room. But it just seems so much closer to the election being just the 27th and 28th than I've ever seen before. And if they can do that, that's great. But it just seemed in the past that between early voting, setting up a room, and everything like that, they've wanted more of October. So
That's what they've asked for. I think it's because it's the off year.
And it will be big
Right.
needs. Okay, thank you.
So this will be a mail election as the off year.
Does the Gantt have grassroots capability?
We will have grassroots capability. That's why we're making the contract, so that we can have grassroots set up. They'll be there. We'll be in one location the whole time, and they'll be able to televise there. So included is the cost, I mean, not in this, but when we budgeted for moving your meetings to this location, we included having grassroots there the whole time.
Good.
I'm not sure if we're going to be able to have them on hold because it says that, they want a reservation, you pay 50% if you don't use it. So it may be that we need to reserve it. Otherwise, if you wanted to move it, you may not have that option.
Would there be a possibility of holding it on the 4th? Do back-to-back shorter work session, and then have a regular meeting?
If I could predict the agenda, I could answer that,
Well,
but
we
I
could
don't know that I
arrange the
can.
agenda to make that work, perhaps. I don't know, I just tossing it out
I
as
think we
an
just
idea.
go for the 5th.
It's typically budget time in here. We're doing some sort of budget presentations, and so.
We're probably gonna need longer time than we would
So
want.
let's go for the 5th, as Patty
Let's
said.
just go for the
Okay,
5th.
we're going to add the 5th. Thank you. Those are my only 2 items.
Okay, anything else from the board?
Let's see if we want to-
I had kind of an announcement. I applied for a Colorado State board. It's a newly created board called Strategic Planning Group on Aging. And it was just enabled on June 4th when the governor signed the House Bill 1033. And this board will be comprised of 23 people. Half of them have to be Democrats and half Republicans, and so many have to be from 5 of them. They have to be from 5 different congressional districts, and all of these different slots to be filled. So it's kind of a numbers game, the governor's office, to be filling in the different slots. They do have 1 seat for a county commissioner, and that's what caught my eye. And since I have been active in the Senior Services Council and on the Aging Well in Pitkin County effort, it seemed like an appropriate board for me to be on. So the decision will be made, I think, on August 1st. I won't know before then, but just wanted to let you know that if I'm selected, and I'll have a time commitment. I've talked to Marty Ames about it, and I would be relying on her for part of my doing research and stuff, and just being up to speed on the aging issues.
Do
Patty?
you know how often they meet and where they meet, and because isn't there expense to the county then for your travel time and all that?
The state pays my expenses.
Okay.
any
That's always good to
expenses,
know.
so, yeah, if they had said the county has to pay for it, I would have thought longer on it.
Yeah.
So just to let you know.
Well, thanks for your contribution on that. We all know the graying of the valley and the areas happening. I appreciate your willingness to serve.
Yeah, and when you look at the charge for this newly formed commission, it was supported by Representative Hamner and Senator Donovan, both supported the bill. And it sounds like a really good commission that is being created. And it has a lifespan that has a certain charge to get a report out by a certain time, but it sounds very similar to our Aging Well in Pitkin County effort. It's on a statewide level.
Okay, very good.
Rachel?
Yeah, I pretty much, I think I have one, but we'll try to keep to that. As you all are aware, during the legislative session, there was the bill to start studying the transfer of public lands to the state. We opposed that. We wrote a letter. I testified. It was killed when it went to the House. But the movement continues on. Rust never sleeps. And what we're seeing, fortunately, I think from some counties, San Juan County was the first to formally pass a resolution of opposition. And then that's been picked up and passed by San Miguel County and La Plata. And each time it's evolved a little bit and got a little better, more accurate. I think that what has been premier to me is that it's not that Coloradans are just against transfer of public lands to the state of Colorado. They also don't want to lose their public lands in New Mexico or Arizona or Alaska or anywhere else. It's just against the entire larger movement. I have contacted Cindy Hubin in the planning office, community development, to work on bringing a resolution forward to this board to formally pass. So I know that's been our position based on our letters, but we don't have a resolution on the book. And it would be most valuable if we can formally pass that before I go to the annual meeting of NACO in July. That group has some carefully worded, if the state agrees, blah, 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 type of things coming out of the Public Lands Committee there. And once a year, we renew all the older resolutions and then consider new resolutions. So it would be nice to be able to speak with one voice about how many counties in Colorado have opposed this acquisition. So I just wanted to kind of put that more on the calendar to make sure we've passed it before then and check back in with Cindy on that. I know she's been looking again. It's you know, it has to be worded such that you can accommodate things such as the BLM selling us the land on the disposal list at the head of the Hunter Creek Trail. So you gotta make sure it's not too much of a blanket statement or other types of things. But I think I just want to give the board the heads up that I'd like to make sure we have that passed before July.
Are you working with like Eagle County, Summit County to see if, I'm trying to think of.
They are also, yeah,
Yeah,
they're all.
because the more you have in hand when you go, I think is great. It's a great idea. We need to definitely stay on top of it.
Yeah, something more formal. So yeah, those guys are working on it, so a lot of those counties. Let's see, what's the one other one with that? Oh, I also would just like to have that opportunity now to, I had mentioned to this board before that I'd be introducing a resolution at NACO to support the Forest Lands Recreational Enhancement Act, which is what allows the fees charged at, say, Maroonville's or from outfitters, a certain percentage, it varies with different departments, to stay on the land and be reinvested in the recreational amenities. That program is expiring. And so I have introduced a resolution supporting that reauthorization with an amendment that they actually allow more of the ski area leases to stay with the regional office as well. Now that they have enhanced summer recreation opportunities, the Forest Service has a lot more workload permitting those summer recreation activities. And then of particular thanks to Dale Will and John Ely for helping me kind of bang out a last-minute resolution supporting the reauthorization of the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And the challenge is you never know what other people are going to submit or not submit. And I had heard that some of the other states were going to be opposing the reauthorization of the Land and Water Conservation Fund because they want the transfer of public lands to the states anyhow. They don't want any more public lands to occur. And of course, that's been a valuable source in Colorado. So deep thanks to Dale and John for just helping me bang that out and hit it on the deadline yesterday. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Rachel, for all you do.
Okay, any further open discussion items?
Motion to go into executive session for the purposes of?
This would be a motion to go into executive session to discuss a new item of litigation that was brought to the county concerning partition of property located within, obviously, the unincorporated area of Pitkin County, pursuant to CRS 246402-4B.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded to go into executive session. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thank you, Zach.
Thanks, Zach.